I'm Maria Dowdy, President and CEO of the Chicago Network, and I am thrilled to be here with you today celebrating Launchpad's 10th anniversary. I know. It was started in 2014 as a 90-minute session the morning of our Women in the Forefront luncheon, and it's evolved into a transformational journey of empowerment and tailored professional development. This summit was started to fill a very long-standing need, helping women navigate to find their way into the C-suite. You're here because you are dedicated to investing in your professional and personal development. You're a top performer, a current or emerging leader who represents the future of women's leadership in Chicagoland and the future of the Chicago Network. We have an extraordinary program for you today. Our theme, Leading Through Times of Uncertainty and Transformation, encourages us to challenge into opportunities. We are honored to have a lineup of seasoned leaders and experts who have shattered glass ceilings, ready to share their experiences and strategies with you. Launchpad is not just about learning. It's about building a community. Therefore, I strongly encourage you to engage with influential leaders, expand your network, foster connections that will support your career growth. This is the time. Launchpad would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors, so thank you to the following people: Universal Plus, State Street Global Advisors, Universe sponsor, Publicis Group, our Galaxy sponsors, the University of Illinois Geist College of Business, PwC, our lunar sponsors, Altar Advisors, Chicago State University, G.I. Stone, Hush Blackwell, U.S. Bank, Wheels Fleet Management and Mobility Solutions, and GTCR. I would also like to give a very special thanks to our Chicago Network Launchpad Committee and the Chicago Network staff, particularly Laura Jaffe, who we could not have done this without her, but also Nathan Upchurch on our team and Ellen Feinberg. So there's no way that any of us would be here today without the brilliance of that Chicago Network Committee and their planning and dedication to this work and the staff. So thank you to each of you. I'm so grateful. A few housekeeping matters. We will be forwarding a contact list to all in-person attendees following the program. If you'd like to opt out, please let us know so we can make sure we take you off the list. We are recording today's session. One of the things I love about this day is it's about meeting people. So please feel free, I know this sounds strange, but feel free to switch tables. It is totally fine. No one will be offended. In fact, I strongly encourage it, particularly if you're sitting next to somebody that you know, because you know that's what we do. We gravitate to the people we know, but this is the time for you to meet someone you don't know. This is your community. These are the women you're going to turn to as you're continuing to climb, and you need help, and I guarantee you all of you are experiencing similar challenges, so you are wonderful sounding boards and supports for each other. We'd love for you to stay connected with us on LinkedIn, and we also have a weekly newsletter, so feel free to subscribe. The restrooms are on the 7th and 8th floor. Apologies that there's not one on this floor, so it's easier just going up and down the stairs. And also, if you would please kindly mute your cell phones. Laura looks like she's got something she's going to hand me. Stage right. Okay. Oh, yes. We are very, very sophisticated at the Chicago Network. We're all about innovation. At the tables, Laura? Yeah. At the tables, you'll find a QR code. This QR code is actually what we're going to do for polling. So we do have polling today. So please, if you don't mind, grab it on, put it on there so that you can have access to the QR code. Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Okay, let's do it. Let's get started. Feel free to grab drinks, get up and move if you need to. This is just a day for you. So whatever makes you joyful, coffee makes me joyful. So I'm going to be going back and forth to the coffee station. Let me introduce first and start with our first speaker. Let me please introduce Susan Gallagher, President and CEO of Bravanti, a global firm that focuses on executive coaching, executive team optimization, new leader and team acceleration, and leadership acceleration. She's also a past board chair of the Chicago Network. Bravanti has coached and trained more than 25,000 women over the years globally. They're focused on helping organizations drive change and deliver results through proven best practices in leadership and executive team development. Susie's going to introduce our first speaker. Please welcome Susie.
Thank you, Maria, and good morning, everyone, and welcome. I am excited to be here, and how fun is it to introduce a colleague? But I have so much to tell you. Carol, I won't share any secrets, but I've narrowed it down, so I've got some interesting things to say. Anyway, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Carol Fitzgibbons. Carol is a true powerhouse in the realm of leadership development, whose passion and expertise have a profound impact on diverse industries and organizations. She's had over a 30-year career that spans consulting, corporate life, corporate leadership roles, academia. She is still an adjunct professor with Loyola's Quinlan School of Business. But her impact and her essence as a visionary leader and a dedicated educator is profound. Currently, she is serving as the lead director of the Leadership Acceleration practice at our company, Bravanti. Carol is sought after to help organizations unlock their full potential through strategic leadership development and executive coaching, which you heard from Maria. Her role involves partnering with clients to craft tailored strategies that foster leadership growth and meaningful organizational change. At Bravanti, she leverages her deep knowledge and extensive experience to shape the future of leadership. And as we all know, and what we're talking about today, it keeps changing. Carol's career is marked with her exceptional facilitation skills, her holistic approach to organizational development, and her ability to thrive in fast-paced environments. Her system thinking perspective, coupled with her experience across technology, healthcare, education, manufacturing, what else? I could go on. Professional services, the list goes on. But it gives her really invaluable insights into the critical role of emotional intelligence in leadership. So today, Carol will share her knowledge on the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership. Her insights promise to provide us with a deep understanding of how emotional intelligence can transform leadership practices and drive organizational success. But it all really starts with us as individuals. So we'll take that journey this morning. I'm excited to hear more. Carol, thanks. Please welcome Carol to the stage.
Thanks, Susie. I'm really not sure how I'm going to live up to that introduction, to be honest. But I want to say thank you so much for having me. It's just such a pleasure to be here. And I just have to say the view from up here is really cool, because I am looking out at a room of, when I looked at the attendee list, over 150 powerful women leaders. So I want to have you guys give yourselves a hand for being in this room. Which is really, really amazing. So again, I'm honored to be here today to talk about this topic of emotional intelligence. And I'm personally really passionate about this topic because I have a strong belief that emotional intelligence is one of the most vital skills that we need to succeed as a leader and in life. And so I'm curious, to hear your perspectives on whether you agree with that. I see a lot of head nods. Yes, I got to have some applause on that. Emotional intelligence, very, very important. And we're going to hear your perspectives on that both through the poll and some table group discussions. But first I want to share what I'm hoping that you take away from this little conversation we're going to have here. First, it is an even greater belief around how vital emotional intelligence is to your success as a leader and basically your happiness in life. And then second, my hope is that, I'm sure most of you have exposure to the concept, but my hope is that you'll walk away with maybe just even more clarity than you already have around what emotional intelligence really is. And then we get into the true meat of it. My hope is that you'll get a little bit of insight into your own emotional intelligence skills, and we'll do a little self-reflection exercise for you to do that. And then probably the most important is that you pick up at least one practical action that you can take to further enhance your emotional intelligence skills. So how does that sound? Yes, okay, awesome, fantastic. So then let's get started. We'll see if I can master the technology. Okay, we're off to good, there I am. Okay, hold on, here we go. Am I going backwards? Oh my God, okay, I'm not off to the best start. Okay, apparently the large green button is the one to hit instead of the red back button. So here we go. Okay, I think we're gonna be heading in the right direction here. Yes, okay, so we've established it's a good idea to spend time on this topic of emotional intelligence. And this is where I'd love to hear your perspectives on whether you agree with this. This is where we're gonna use that that polling technology, hopefully. And so my first question for you is about the extent to which you believe that emotional intelligence is an essential skill for success in leadership. And if you take a look at your phones where you pulled up this Slido, I think we called it. All right, awesome. Oh my gosh, here come the results. So far, the feeling is absolutely, and a couple of folks are saying, yeah, but there's some other skills that are even more important. And we're, oh wow, look at that, going up and up and up. And then, wow, we have 120 responses so far. I don't know if you guys can see, we're tracking up here with the number of people that have responded. All right, very cool. We've got 125. So clearly, the vast majority of you say this is a really important skill. So second question for you is, second question is this an essential skill for your happiness in life and for you to live a fulfilling life? So let's take a look at what you have to say about this. All right, so still important, and some other stuff that's really important. Yeah, okay, all right, looks like we've got full participation here on this one as well. So clearly, both of these are very important, but you're convinced that it's really a vital skill for leadership. So now what I'd love to understand is a little bit about your current knowledge level around the topic of emotional intelligence. So let's weigh in on this next question here, which is, I know the definition and key components of emotional intelligence. And you can see your responses are, yeah, for sure, I know this inside out. In fact, get off the stage, Carol, because I could teach this thing. Versus, yeah, I know about this topic, or not really. I'm not quite sure about this topic. And so you can see, yeah, we've got knowledge, right? I got somewhat, but I'm not sure I've got all the details. So that's another reason I think it's good to spend a little time. We're gonna pick into some of the details here. So then final question here is, let's see, survey says, hold on a minute, here we go. You know exactly what you need to do to enhance your emotional intelligence skills. So take a look at this question. Have a feeling that I know where this is going to go. All right, yeah, same, right? Is that on both of these, you're feeling like, I've got a really good foundation of what emotional intelligence is, and I have some sense of what I need to do to build my skills. And so then there's value in diving into, what is this thing really, and how can I work on it? The place I'd like to start with that, though, is to get some of your perspectives into the room. The thing about emotional intelligence is that we have the opportunity on a day-to-day basis to have lived experience around what emotional intelligence looks like. And so let's just do a little show of hands thing here. How many of you would say that you have had the opportunity at some point in your career to work for or with someone who had really pretty good emotional intelligence skills? So show of hands. Okay, this is awesome news. So that alone is some data that there are people out there that are doing this really, really well. So now I think you know where I'm gonna go with my next question, right? Show of hands. How many of you have worked for or with someone who was really not very good at emotional intelligence? Yeah, there's the sad news, right? Okay, so we got both of them going on. And my sense is, because this has been the case for me, there are days when I show up with really good emotional intelligence skills, and there are days when I show up with not so great emotional intelligence skills. And so this is fluid. But the point is, we know what this looks like because we've experienced it and we've seen it. So let's get your perspectives into the room. What I'd love for you to do, and this is a chance to get to know each other a bit more at the table, is at your tables, I'm going to have you have the discussion about these folks that came to mind for you. Don't name any names. Just get them in your brain, of who were very good at emotional intelligence and those who were only okay or not so great at emotional intelligence. And the thing I'd most like you to talk about is, what were the behaviors they were demonstrating that caused you to say, ooh, you're great at this, or oh wow, you could use a little work on that. And then just as importantly, what was the impact of those behaviors on you or others in the organization? So behaviors and impact. And just to make this work in such a large room, I think what we're gonna do is, this half of the room here, so start these tables and over, I'm gonna have you examine those folks who were really good at emotional intelligence. So just focus there on what were the behaviors those folks who were great at emotional intelligence did and what impact did they have. This side, this might actually be a really cathartic experience for you, right? I want you to dig into those examples of those who were really not very good at this. In particular, what were their behaviors and what impact did they have? I'm gonna give you, let me see where we are on time. I'm gonna give you like 5 to 7 minutes to have that conversation, so that way you get to chat with each other a little bit. Everybody good? Okay, dive in. Okay, I'm gonna bring us back together at this point. Okay, I heard a lot of great dialogue and a lot of passion. So unfortunately, because of the size of the room, we can't hear from every table, but I would love to get a little bit of what you talked about in the room. I'm a fan of starting with the negative so we can end on the positive. So why don't we hear a couple of examples from this side of the room and just like shout them out as loud as you can. Okay, great. Yeah, so lack of self-awareness and how their behavior and communication is affecting the room. Absolutely. Let's hear another one over here. Behavior or the impact of the behavior from another table. Not a good listener. Okay, over here. Yeah, okay, so someone who is not good at handling their own emotions, and the impact on that is the others in the group had to manage this person's emotions for them. And was it, I'm curious, in that situation, was there a little bit of like the walking on eggshells? Yeah, right? That's what happens, right? You're constantly like, oh my God, where's this person gonna go? Who's gonna show up today? Yeah, and then when you think about impact of that, that's stressful. right? That adds stress to everything. It really impacts the dynamic in a team. Yeah, here was one back here. Yeah, so someone who's got their own personal agenda, and then that's causing others to kind of feel like, well, my stuff doesn't matter here. Yeah. Let's take another one from over here on this side of the room before, and then more than that, we'll probably get depressed. So what's one more? Yeah, jump in over here. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that into the room. For those that couldn't hear that, it was that a lot of times when it feels like there is lack of EQ, those behaviors aren't showing up, that it may be because we're moving too fast. We have so much pressure. We're not really stepping back and taking the time to be thoughtful about getting others' perspectives, paying attention to what's going on for others, and paying attention to the impact of our behavior on others. Is that where you're going with that? Yeah. And that's why each one of us, some days we can show up doing this really well, and some days we show up not doing it so well. We're not intending, most people are not intending to demonstrate really terrible emotional intelligence and have awful impacts on people, we hope. There's probably a few out there, but the vast majority, that's not the case. So, all right, I think we've kind of gotten a picture of what it looks like when it's not done well and what some of the impacts are. Let's switch over here and hear a couple from this side of the room. Who wants to add in something about what it looks like when emotional intelligence is done well in your experience? High empathy. Okay, and what's the impact? What has been the impact for you when someone is demonstrating high empathy?
They appear human.
Yeah, oh, they appear human. That's actually a really good thing for a leader, by the way. It's not just to appear human, but to be human, right?
And they're good listeners.
Yeah.
And that's how they can be so impactful.
Yeah, so the opposite of what you shared, right? Good listener. You feel like, and then you feel like you're heard, and you feel like you care and you matter to this person. Absolutely. What's another one over here on this side? Yeah, jump in.
When you're speaking to them about an issue and they say, what am I here for? I'm your listener. Do you want me to take action on this?
Oh, I love that. So for those that didn't hear that, it was when they're talking to you, they stop and ask, what is it that you need from me right now? Do you need me to just listen? Do you need me to help take action? So they're intentional about the support that they're going to offer you. That's actually an element of empathy, is figuring out how do I connect with and support a person in a way that works for them. So that's a beautiful example. Let's take one more from this side of the room. Yeah, all the way back there. Thank you.
I was giving the example that my leader is really good about getting to know the individuals on our team. So he has an idea when I'm having an off day or someone's having an off day. He can sort of pivot what's happening and give us a break when we need a break. He's just really good at understanding us all on an individual level.
Yeah, I love that. So a leader who really understands their people. I actually heard two things in there. One is about this interest in getting to know people, so this relationship building piece. And also one of the elements of emotional intelligence I heard emerging there, which is social awareness. So someone who's actually paying attention to what's going on. So I've gotten to know you in the first place, so I know what works and doesn't work for you. Now I'm paying attention in the moment, and then I'm able in that moment to read what's going on and then make some adjustments based on that. This is a terrific example of emotional intelligence. So, all right, the point of this conversation, one, was for you to just have a chance to chat with each other, but also to establish that you know what this looks like. You know what it looks like when it's done well. You know what it looks like when it's not done well. You know the impact of that. And so I suspect what I'm going to share here isn't going to be earth-shattering, but my hope is that what we'll do is kind of put some common language on it and peel it back a little bit. Before we go there, though, I just wanted to share that there is a huge body of research out there, that validates and supports that emotional intelligence is a vital skill, and that talks about the different elements of emotional intelligence that are important. I just wanted to bring in a couple of recent pieces of research that might be interesting to you. Every year, the World Economic Forum puts out a report on a whole host of trends. And one of the things that they weigh in on is what are the most essential skills for that year. And so in their 2023 report, as you'll see up here, they identified the top 10 skills of 2023. I put these little green arrows here because those are the skills that are deeply connected to emotional intelligence. So basically half of the skills that they found were going to be helpful in 2023 are connected directly to what we're talking about. They also weighed in on what did they see back in 2023 on the skills that would be on the rise for 2024 and beyond, and 3 of these are connected directly to emotional intelligence. And you'll notice in both of these, resilience, flexibility, agility came up. Oh my gosh, we're using that every single day, right? Curiosity and lifelong learning, and this motivation and self-awareness is coming up. And so that's some data that shows it's important. The last piece of data that I think is really interesting is this organization called 6 Seconds Emotional Intelligence Network put out a report called State of the Heart. And they are an organization that administers one of the more heavily utilized emotional intelligence assessments. And so what that means is they have a huge global database of people who've been evaluated on emotional intelligence. And so they took a look at their data from 2019 through 2023. And what they were able to see is over the course of those years, that there was a decline in the level of skill that people are being reported as having in their assessment on emotional intelligence overall. And then probably no surprise on this second one, a decline in people's well-being. Right? I mean, obviously, we lived through the pandemic. We're dealing with return to the office. We're dealing with a lot of really tough stuff in the world. And so these things are on the decline, which again is another reason for us as leaders to get amazing at this and to cultivate this in our people. So let's do that. Let's dig in. So here's the definition of emotional intelligence. Again, I'm pretty sure this is something you're familiar with. It is the ability to understand and manage our emotions, understand others' emotions, needs, and perspectives, and interact with others in a way that builds healthy relationships. And by the way, I see folks taking photos. You are going to get these slides, so you will have all of this stuff. I know, Laura, how will they get this information? Awesome. So you're going to get all this. And in fact, if you were interested in digging into that research that was on the prior couple pages, I put sources in there, so you could go and use the Google machine to find that World Economic Forum report, as well as the State of the Heart report. Really, that State of the Heart report is really good. If you're geeking out on emotional intelligence like I tend to, that's definitely a cool one to pull up because very recent research. So here's the definition. So there's a lot going on here. Let's pick this apart. I suspect this is not going to seem like a surprise to you because most of you have probably seen this. That when you think about emotional intelligence, it's typically described as having 4 components to it: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. A way to think about this, if you focus on the left-hand side, so self-awareness and social awareness are about what I see. And self-awareness is what I see within myself. Social awareness is what I see within and when I am with others. So this is about what I'm noticing. What am I noticing within myself? What am I noticing about others and when I'm with others? And then the right-hand side of this graphic is about what you do about it. So self-management is about what I do about what I see within myself and what I do about what I see about others. And then relationship management is about how I'm reaching out to others and building those relationships. I think a way to dig deeper on this, the emotional intelligence is one of those things where it's like an onion. You peel back this big layer, and then the next layer, and the next layer. So the next layer under this is what are the behaviors under each of these 4 categories. To get at that, I'd love for you to do a little self-reflection. So at your tables, you've got a sheet that looks like this. It's got these 4 colors on it. This is an emotional intelligence self-reflection. It's not an assessment or a test. It's just a self-reflection. So that means there's no wrong or right answers. And so, and I'm not gonna have you share this with the folks at your table. This is personal just for you. So what I'd ask you to do, take just a couple minutes, read each of the behaviors under each of the categories, and give yourself a score. And know that this is a point-in-time score. Some of this is gonna change over time for you. So just reflect on, at this point, how am I doing on this? And you can see this is about the frequency with which you demonstrate this behavior. You see the scale up at the top. Once you've evaluated each behavior, just tally up your scores under each category. All right, looks like most people are pretty far along. If you're still capturing your thoughts on this, just go right ahead. The reason I wanted you to do this is so that you could reflect on for yourself, where are my strengths and potential development areas in emotional intelligence? It also gives you an opportunity to really think about some of the behaviors under these 4 categories. In other words, to get more granular, so that you're not saying, gosh, how am I on this giant concept called emotional intelligence? Or how am I on this thing called self-awareness? It's like, okay, wait, there's a bunch of stuff underneath here. My guess is some of you saw patterns where one category was higher or lower than the others, an entire category, because that sometimes emerges. But sometimes what happens is the categories themselves are roughly equal, or pretty close, but there's a behavior or 2 underneath here that you were able to isolate, where you're like, you know, this one is one where I'm really amazing at it, or this one is one where I'd like to do a little bit of work. And that's the idea here, is looking inward at a more granular level on where are my strengths and my development areas. I want to offer another way to think about that, and that is I want to take a look at the competencies around emotional intelligence that are the most important in the workplace. And then I want to highlight 2 particular emotional intelligence concepts that are very important for leaders. And once we get through that, then I'm going to have us think about, okay, how do I get even better at this stuff? So first, let's take a look at these competencies. Actually, there you go, there's your reflection. So here's those same 4 categories, and I want to unfold for you a set of competencies under each of these. And we're not going to dig into each one of these because some of them are covered in those behaviors that you just reflected on. Under self-awareness, the one I want to highlight here is this idea of openness to feedback. That is what's going to allow you to have greater emotional self-insight. So just do some more reflection for yourself about how open am I to feedback, and what can I do to make that even stronger. Let me just unfold all these others here so we've got them up here. I know there's going to be a lot on the page, but the ones that I most want to emphasize under self-management is really the key one I want to dig into is the last one there on focus. So the ones above that, I think you've got some behaviors related to those on that self-reflection. Focus. Okay, this is a really important thing in self-management, and it has two branches to it. One branch is I focus on what's most important, meaning I'm clear on the priorities I need to be focusing on, so I'm focusing on those. So I'm focusing my time on the right stuff. The other branch of focus is I'm being focused in the moment, meaning I can keep myself focused. I can keep myself focused on the task I'm working on. I can keep myself present in a room with other people or in an interaction with another person. And you'll see focus is in italics because it appears under both self-management and social awareness, because that second branch of focus, which is about being able to focus on the moment, is going to be essential to your ability to see what's going on with other people. So I'm just as bad as everyone. I'm guessing some of you are as well. How many times are you in a meeting and you're like doing a little sneak look at your email, right? Under the table, right? Like people don't know you're doing that, right? We like to kid ourselves, I'm just gonna do this over here and no one will know I'm multitasking. And so we have so much coming at us that it is very hard to focus and to be truly present. And if you were to work on one thing, I think that's a really important one, and we'll get to that in just a minute. The last thing I really want to emphasize here is empathy. It came up in a couple spots here in our conversation, and you can see it's in 2 places up here. It's under social awareness, because empathy is about understanding others, paying attention to what's going on with others, but it's also about relationship management, because there's an element of empathy that is about reaching out to others in a way that works for them versus in a way that you would like to be treated. You know, we have the golden rule, treat others the way you'd like to be treated. Actually, you want to treat people the way that they want to be treated. And for you to be able to do that, you have to have a high degree of social awareness, and big element of that is empathy, meaning I'm able to notice others' emotions, needs, and perspectives, and paying attention to that. I'm able to make sense of them so I can understand what's going on for the other person, and then I'm able to take action on that, meaning I can reach out to them in a way that works for them. And so there's a lot of research out there on empathy that actually breaks empathy down into those 3 components I just described: noticing, understanding, and acting. And so if empathy is something that you want to work on or that you're just interested in, again, just consult that ever-present Google machine, and you'll get loads and loads and loads of resources on empathy and what it looks like and how to develop it. So I offer this just as another set of things to reflect on for yourself as a leader in your emotional intelligence skills. So then let's talk about 2 concepts that are under emotional intelligence that are particularly important to leaders. The first one, I feel like this image up on the screen helps illustrate. And so I know I'm sad that you guys aren't close enough to see what's going on here, but for those who can see what's happening on the screen here, this is a photo of Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, and he's having a meeting with his employees. And for those of you that can really see the image, what do you see on the faces of the employees in the room? Yeah, it's a lot of smiling, yeah? How do you think they're feeling? They're leaning in, yeah, they're leaning in. How do you think the employees are feeling here? They're engaged, right? They're excited. They're kind of happy. What do you see that this leader is doing? What's going on his face and his body?
He looks comfortable.
Yeah, doesn't he? He looks relaxed and comfortable in this setting. What else? Yeah, it seems like an informal conversation. You guys are my friends, right, kind of thing. Yeah, he's smiling, and he looks curious, right? He's like, wow, he looks kind of curious. And so the reason I share this photo is this is a perfect illustration of this concept called mood contagion. How many of you have heard of that term? Yeah, mood contagion. There's a lot of research that shows that moods catch. Moods infect others. And you don't need the research to tell you this, right? How many times have you experienced a person's mood infecting the room? And it can infect the room in a positive way. Someone can walk into the room and like everyone's, and then someone comes in and they bring the room up or they bring the room down. Whose mood in an organization is the most likely to infect the rest of the organization? The leader. And so that's why, as a leader, emotional intelligence is critical. Your ability to understand where your own mood is in any moment, and to manage what you're doing with your mood, how you're putting it out there, and to notice what is happening in the room so that you can make an intentional choice about the energy that you want to bring in, so that you can move that group into the space that you want them to be in terms of their mood is really important. The second concept that's connected to emotional intelligence that's super important for leaders is this thing called the CEO disease. Has anyone heard this term? Okay, I'm sure you're all like, oh boy, I can guess what that one's all about. So the clue of what this one is all about is that old saying, the emperor has no clothes. Has anyone heard that? Yeah, so what that means is, and research shows this as well, the higher you go in an organization, the less people tell you stuff. Right? Am I right? You guys are like, oh yeah, that happens. And the thing that people are the least likely to tell you about, the higher you go in an organization, and if you think this won't happen to you, you're kidding yourself. It just is a reality. There's a power distance between you and others, the higher you go in an organization, and that creates risk for others in being truly honest and open with you. It's a fact. And so as a leader, it's important to accept that that's gonna happen, but the thing that people will be the least likely to give you feedback about is your own behavior and the impact it's having on you. If you're lucky, they'll tell you about what's going on in the organization. Oh, this project is off track, or we really need to invest more over here, otherwise it's not gonna go well. But are they gonna pull you aside and say, hey, you know, in that meeting, you really upset us with what you said and how you said it. You made us feel small. Like, okay, you're gonna say that to your boss, your boss's boss, your boss's boss? It's hard to do that. And so it means those emotional intelligence skills around self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management become that much more important so that you can be paying attention to what's going on for yourself, because people may not give you the feedback. And just as importantly, so that you can read what's going on in the room. You can get a sense of, oh boy, I think this thing I said maybe didn't land right on people because I'm looking at their faces. Like, I'm getting some clues, and I should maybe ask people, how do you feel about that? Like, it's a moment for me to stop and say, oh wow, I want to make sure everyone's with me and they're okay. It's also, emotional intelligence is underneath your ability to create an environment where people do feel comfortable giving you feedback, especially about your behavior. So just keep these things in mind, more to think about. So with that, then what do you do about all this? How do you build a skill in emotional intelligence? So there are so many suggestions about how to build your emotional intelligence skills. I'm gonna boil it down for you into 5 actions that really do work. Before I show you those, though, I just want to give the disclaimer that the way that you should work on your emotional intelligence skills is to focus on the stuff that matters most for you. So that self-reflection that I had you do is go back and look at the things that are your strengths. Each one of us is at a different entry point on emotional intelligence. And that is because where do you learn? Where's the first place you learn about this stuff called emotional intelligence? At home as a child. And so each one of us has grown up in a different environment and therefore developed different skill from the very beginning around everything that has to do with emotion, everything that has to do with emotion regulation, with self-control, with social connections with other people. So we start at a different place, and then we have experiences throughout our lives that shape those skills and concepts and our perceptions about those. So meet yourself where you are and know that that is okay wherever you are, and identify the things where your strengths are and the things that you want to work on in this space. And don't take on too much at once, because like we know with everything in development, you take on too much at once, you're not going to be able to work on anything. So I'm going to offer 5 things that are concrete, pragmatic actions you can take. I'd suggest you pick one of these and hit it hard. Like, pick the one that's gonna make the biggest difference for you. And so here they are. First, pause and breathe. I mean, you know, it seems pretty simple, but the research shows over and over and over again, if you can put space between stimulus and response, you're in a really good spot. In fact, they teach Navy SEALs breathing techniques as part of their training so that they know when they're going into an emotionally charged situation, high stakes, they know how to bring their body into a place of calm. And so pause and breathe. Second, reflect regularly. If you reflect regularly, this is what allows you to see your own behavior and think about how you want to operate going forward. Third, get a practice of seeking feedback and acting on feedback. Fourth, manage your well-being. Oh gosh, that's real easy, Carol. Right, we all struggle with this. But if you are tired, if you are stressed, if you haven't had whatever it is that helps you be okay, your morning run, your walk with your dog, your dinner with your kids, your well-being is not going to be in a place where you can be super self-aware, so where you can do a great job with self-management, where you can be present with others, where you can reach out to others in a way that works for them. The fifth one I think is going to be extra controversial, and here it is. It is stop multitasking. Bad news for you and me, we got to stop multitasking. Multitasking is a myth. It is not real. Your brain cannot do two things at once. When you are multitasking, you are actually task switching. You're moving from one task to another, and you lose time and focus when you make that switch in your brain. And so if you do look at that email under the table, you missed something in the meeting, and it's going to take you a few minutes to get back. And so again, I'd urge you to pick just one of these out of here that really spoke to you, and just say, for the next month, I am going to work really hard on this. And so what I'd like you to do with our remaining 5 minutes together before we open up to Q&A is I'd love for you to talk about this at the tables. So share one of these 5 things that really spoke to you that you want to work on with each other. And then here's the thing I'd love you to brainstorm. Once you've each shared, here's the thing that I think is going to make a difference for me. Brainstorm, what is it that you can do to turn that into a regular practice so that it becomes a sustainable habit? Okay, so take 5 minutes to talk about that. Again, hopefully what you're taking away from this conversation together is a couple of things. One, an even stronger belief that emotional intelligence is a super vital skill for all of us as leaders and our own happiness in our lives. So like almost like a renewed commitment to lean in on this one. And then hopefully maybe just even a little bit more clarity on what this squishy emotional intelligence thing is. And then a little bit of insight into your own skills, some strengths, some development areas for you. And then again, most importantly, at least one really pragmatic action that you can take. And again, the advice I'd offer you is focus on one thing. The research on habit formation is that you have to hit something really hard over and over and over and over again, because what you're doing is you're forming a new neural pathway in your brain. Our brains are amazingly like renewing pieces of our body, and they have a lot of plasticity. It's a term called neuroplasticity, right? Where you can learn new things and you can build new habits, but what it takes is repetition. And so that's why there's value in setting a goal for yourself, saying, hey, I think number 2, reflecting regularly is going to be the thing for me, or I think it's going to be, cutting down on the multitasking. And so then let me write not a big giant goal. Let me identify one very small behavior in here that I am going to work on, and set a goal about what that looks like, and work on it consistently over the course of, a month, a couple of weeks, a month, and stop and reflect regularly on how did that go, what's working, what's not working, what would I adjust, and then that's how you're going to form new habits and behaviors around this stuff. So with that, we have a couple minutes for questions if you have any. I can't promise I'm going to have answers, but we'll give it a shot. Jumping in. Laura's bringing a microphone over here.
Hi, I was really interested in the one fact about the decline since 2019 in emotional intelligence, and if you could talk a little bit more, is that workforce related? Can you just give a little bit more about where that came from?
Sure, yeah, that came from an organization called 6 Seconds Emotional Network, and they publish and administer an emotional intelligence assessment that's utilized pretty widely in the corporate world. And so they have a database of, I think it's over 275,000 responses to their emotional intelligence assessment, and so they're able to mine that data. So what they did is they took a sample of that data and just looked at. Was that me? Whatever it is, I don't know what I did, but someone fixed it, thank you. Is they took a sample of that data and looked at how people were rated on their emotional intelligence skills over time and saw that those ratings were going down. So the perception of people's emotional intelligence and well-being is on the decline. They have their theories of why that would be. The question was, do they have any idea of why that would be? They don't have evidence in the data of exactly why that would be. What they're able to see in the data is whether scores are going up or down. And so they have their theories, I have my theories. My theories are about the fact that we lived through a massive crisis that we've never seen before during those years, that put significant stress on people in ways that we never could have imagined. And then I have a personal theory, but I want to make it really clear this is my personal theory, is that the world has gotten more divisive, and that has had an impact on people's self-management and social awareness and relationship management. So I think that there's a kind of a meta trend going on around that. The other thing is that the world has got increasingly more complex. So technology has made things go faster and faster and faster, and information come at us at such a pace that it's overwhelming. And so those are my theories. But yeah, when you get the slides, you'll see I put a source in there, the report that they labeled it the state of the heart. And it's like a 50-page report, really good, dig into it. All right, you're welcome. Other questions? Okay, we've got someone bringing a microphone over back here to the back of the room, and then, yeah.
Thank you for such a great presentation and conversation. I certainly have opportunities to build my own emotional intelligence, but I'm curious, so much of this work is grounded in acceptance, right? That this is an opportunity to build skill. And so I'm curious, as you think about folks who, report to us or teams that we're looking to build, and folks have to build their own emotional intelligence, how to raise this topic and how to really address some of the gaps that we see as managers or leaders in our own people and their ability to build. Yeah.
Okay, so it's about how do I get my team talking about this and help my team work on this? Is that where you're going with that? Yeah, and give feedback to folks about this. So my first thought is just simply saying to the team as a whole, emotional intelligence is a critical skill for all of us, and I want to make sure that we're all really clear on what that looks like and that we have open conversation about it. And so doing a little pay it forward mini teach with the team. So I think as a leader, opening up the conversation yourself and offering resources, education, so that everyone gets on common language and that you make it okay for people to talk about this. I say that with a little hesitation because psychological safety is something that's really important in the workplace for people to feel comfortable talking about things like emotional intelligence. So you do have to, this is a place where you do have to read the room, use your social awareness as a leader to see, is the team at a place of readiness, that if we engage in conversations about things like self-awareness and self-management and social awareness and relationship management, that they'll be open about this. If you're feeling like I'm not so sure, then you just may have a little bit of trust building to do along the way. I think when it comes to giving feedback to people about things like self-awareness or self-management, doing the typical good feedback practice, which is focusing on a behavior a really concrete specific behavior in a specific situation, and talking about the impact of that behavior. So if any of you have seen the STAR feedback model or the SBI feedback model, it's about situation, behavior, impact, really giving them concrete feedback versus general feedback about, well, you seem to be in a bad mood a lot, which I know none of you would do that, but sometimes that happens, right? So it is getting specific, and then I think also orienting them around the definitions of things like self-awareness and why that's important in the workplace and what that looks like. Does that start to address your question a bit? Okay, good, awesome, thank you. All right, I think we have time for one more, so I'm gonna let Laura decide where she's gonna run, and we'll take that one.
Thank you. My question's kind of going the other way. How do you help influence emotional intelligence of the folks above you? I think I lead with emotional intelligence for my team. I become a landing zone for a lot of the issues, and I don't feel that the people above me, those in the room who are my colleagues, earmuffs, have emotional intelligence. So what then? I mean, it's very hard for me to say, let me break down for you in the ways that you just said, how you can work on yours, but what are some tips there for managing up?
Sure, managing up with emotion for folks who you're trying to help them demonstrate more emotional intelligence. That's tricky because I think I have to pull my, I spent my career in the HR field. I think I have to pull out my two favorite HR words in the English language, which is, does anyone want to guess? It depends. I'm sorry. It's where I gotta go. It really does depend. I think you really need to take into consideration, you know, what the specific thing you're trying to get them to have greater self-awareness on or address. I think you have to think about what your relationship is with them and your ability to give them frank feedback versus figure out a way to more subtly move them in the direction that you want to go. And I think it is about thinking about really getting clear on the outcome you're trying to accomplish. That said, going back to this idea of if what you want to do is give them, help them see something they're doing that's having a not great impact, then relying on that nice structured approach to feedback of situation, behavior, impact, and really focusing in on specific behavior versus generalities is helpful. But again, take into consideration all of those things about the readiness for the person to hear the feedback and your comfort level giving it. I think also when it comes to managing up, that it's really important to not feel like that is all on you. And so oftentimes people hearing things from multiple voices, so you leveraging your network in other words, do you know, is there someone you're connected with and close with that person listens to? So how do you find the influencers of that person and enlist them in your effort to drive change in managing up? So hopefully that gives you something to go on. All right. Oh, one more in. Okay, one more. Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So obviously we've talked about the benefits of having emotional intelligence in the workplace. Can you speak to when it might be a detriment? Like I know for myself, I've always had strong emotional intelligence, and a weakness I feel that's sort of come out is that I have such strong empathy and I'm always going to bat for my team, and sometimes it seems like I'm making excuses for them, but truly like I really am seeing where they are, and I just think there's a balance there that sometimes I struggle with because I care so much and I want everyone to do well, and sometimes people are just thinking, well, that's just how you are, you're too nice, you're too soft.
Yep.
So I don't know if there's anything there to speak to.
Yeah, well, so you answered your own question, I feel like, right? Is that any skill can be taken to an extreme and then it becomes something that isn't as helpful for you. Certainly, empathy and care for others is one that can be a challenge. If you're oriented really heavily towards that, it can make it difficult then to hold people accountable. It also can create an environment where you're the one who everyone is coming to for listening to them, and that can be exhausting for you. What I would offer to you then is to come back around to your own well-being. is to ask yourself, am I giving too much here? And what is it that I need to do to advocate for myself or to manage myself so that I am hitting at that sweet spot point versus not going overboard. So it is, I think, reflecting on what's working for you, what's not working for you. But you're exactly right. Any skill taken to the extreme can end up being a non-skill at the end of the day. What I would say too is remember that a concept I like to put out there is this idea of just dialing it up ever so slightly or dialing it down ever so slightly. Oftentimes we don't have to make massive sweeping changes in our behavior. What we need to do is to just say, if I were to just bring it down one notch, that allows me to stay true to my authentic self as an empathetic person, yet also not take it to the level that it's getting in my way. Make sense? So, okay, I think I'm getting the hook.
We are pulling the hook. Carol, please, everyone, help me thank Carol. I am definitely going to put down my phone when I'm in meetings and not hold it under the table. Multitasking, I love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So grateful. Ladies, we're going to take a quick little break. If you don't have to take a break, don't leave your table, but feel free if you have to. Less than 10 minutes. We're going to try to start in about 8 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
We're going to go ahead and get started, and my amazing Chicago Network Board Chair, Deb Boyda, is going to introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
Good morning. Maria just mentioned my name. My name is Deb Boyda, and I am, and I'm going to say this very intentionally, the chairwoman of the board of the Chicago Network. And I'm really glad that you were all able to make it here today. I know that you heard earlier from Maria, but our Launchpad platform is critically important to us living our vision as an organization even more fully and more deeply. And the next generation of emerging women leaders, which is all of you in this room, are really important to us because we want to see all of you continue to succeed and flourish and do amazing things in our city and in your careers and in the world. I'm really excited for our next session, which is going to be focused on managing leadership dilemmas, and it's going to be run by a woman named Jackie Gnepp. Jackie is the president of Humanly Possible, which is an organization based here in Chicago. She is an executive coach and an organizational consultant, and she's led leadership workshops all around the world, so you can imagine she's seen a lot and heard a lot with a whole host of different kinds of organizations, including Fortune 100 companies, which may be relevant to some of you here in this room. She's also taught at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, at Duke University's Business School, and for the Melbourne Business School in Australia. I think you may have seen that in her bio in the little brochure, which is, those are some pretty high-profile organizations to teach at. Jackie's passion is to use psychological science to make women more successful and more fulfilled in their lives. And when I read that, I thought, oh, I want to sign up for that. And a fun fact about Jackie, and I think we'll get to see this in the next few minutes, is that she is a great improviser, which makes her workshops really fun and really interactive, so I think we're in for a treat. So please join me in extending a warm welcome to Jackie, and let's go.
I don't know. Phone is on. Oh, is it? Oh, excellent. I swear I didn't do a thing. Well, hello, TCN Launchpad. You know, as a speaker, I immediately have the dilemma of whether I should tell you all about my topic, give you an overview, do the let me tell you what I'm going to tell you before I tell you thing. and just want to interact with you and talk to you and get to know you. So right away, I'm experiencing a dilemma. And I'm guessing many of you experienced some dilemma just coming here today. Maybe you wanted to get here early and grab a good seat where you had a clear view of the stage, but maybe also you wanted to talk to people, you wanted to grab breakfast, you wanted to make another stop in the ladies and check how you were doing. You know, so you had that dilemma. If you had a dilemma similar to that this morning, show yourself. Okay, a lot of you. Or maybe today you came in and you thought, I know that TCN Launchpad is going to be a great opportunity for networking. I should sit with people I've never met before. But oh, I actually know some people here. I might have come with a bunch from my home office, all sorts of advantages. Maybe I should sit with people I know. If you experienced a dilemma similar to that this morning, show yourself. Okay, many of you, but fewer of you. And then there's the, I'm really actually pretty interested in emotional intelligence. I really want to know about managing leadership dilemmas. What are those? What is she even talking about? But you know, I don't want to put my phone away because someone might need me. Someone at home, someone at the office. So I'll just, as our last speaker said, kind of keep it handy. So if you experienced a dilemma like that this morning, show yourself. Okay, there we go. All right, the next thing I want to say is thank you to those of you who showed yourself, because that takes some vulnerability. You are in a room of people who are friends and friendly, but you don't know all of us, you don't know me, and yet you showed yourself. So thank you for that. That takes a bit of courage. And if you did not raise your hand to any of those three questions, maybe those dilemmas didn't apply to you. And that's fine, because we're all going to be finding dilemmas for ourselves this morning, and you will have plenty of opportunity to be vulnerable with one another. So let me talk first about what dilemmas are. All right, well, this slide looks different from when I prepared it, so that's the first surprise for me. We'll see how all the others look. Well, most of you cannot read this slide, so I will just tell you what it says. Dilemmas can be divided into problems and what we're going to call natural tensions. Problems can be solved, resolved, and decided once and for all. Natural tensions are not solved or decided. They are managed over time. Now, you may have heard natural tensions referred to as tensions, paradoxes, polarities, competing commitments. So you may have come across other terms for the natural tensions, what I call natural tensions. We're going to spend a lot of time on those today because those are the most common in leadership dilemmas. So let's distinguish between problems and natural tensions. You, by the way, will have all these slides, so please, no photographing. We're going to send them all out to you. You'll have them next week. Problems are characterized by independent options. You get to choose. You can combine options, but you still get to choose. Fixed trade-offs, and they are decidable at some point. Most of the dilemmas you experience during the day in your organizations are problems. They may be headaches, but you know how to solve them and you solve them. Or even if I just want to give you an example of a problem with a trade-off. Say you're making a road trip. You'd like to get there fast, but you also, you don't want to be in a lot of highway traffic. And so you think, well, there's a trade-off. I could take the highway, or I could take this scenic route. Well, one of them is going to be faster, more efficient. The other ones, you're going to be passing interesting things. Okay, that's a problem, but you solve it. You just solve it and you go from here to wherever you're going. Maybe you do part of it on the highway, part of it on the scenic route. Maybe you go one way on the highway and you come back on the scenic route. Whatever. There are trade-offs to those two choices, but you can make a decision and you move on. In contrast to problems, natural tensions involve interdependencies. Instead of independent options, they are interdependent options. They involve what apparently, not always literally, but apparently are opposites. They feel like opposite choices, not just different ones. And they are dynamic over time. They are never solved. They are never resolved. They continue, and you need to work with them. So let's take a really simple example. Let's take a biological example. Breathing. I inhale and I exhale. Apparently, those are opposite things. They're interdependent. If you want to try just inhaling for a while, you will discover you can't do that. Okay, they're interdependent, they're apparent opposites, and they're dynamic over time. It's not as though you can't hold your breath, dive underwater, and then exhale later. But in the normal course of your existence, they are a balance back and forth. So an example that is a little closer to what you might think about during the day, because most of us don't spend too much time thinking about breathing, is communicating. So you know that to hold a conversation, you have to both I'm not hearing. You have to both speak and listen, yes, to hold a conversation. And you do so more or less in alternation, but not exactly in alternation. They're not literal opposites, speaking and listening, but they feel like opposites because it's hard to do them simultaneously. And it continues for the length of your conversation, and communication actually continues for the length of your life. I bet you can think of people who are out of balance in speaking and listening. Raise your hand if you can think of anyone. Okay. Now, I don't know about in this room, but in most places, people, when they're thinking about someone who's out of balance in speaking and listening, they're thinking about someone who talks too much. They talk, and they don't stop, and they don't listen well. So, yes, that is definitely a concern, and we don't want to be that person. But it is also a problem when people listen too much. So you might be in a meeting, everyone's sitting around solving some important problem, and there is a quiet person listening very intently, and they are not saying anything. So here's the first piece of interesting information that I will give you today. People who are really quiet are not people who don't have anything to say. They are people with higher standards than the rest of us for when to open their mouth. So if around your table during these conversations, you have someone who's listening and not speaking up, they're sitting on some good thoughts. And what we need to do is say, excuse me, Hannah, Maria, Sophia over there. We haven't heard your good idea. What do you think about this? Okay? So we want to bring out the quiet people because they're just sitting on good ideas that we're not getting. Okay, I want us to think about natural tensions. So let's think about some natural tensions in leading a good life. This is a big topic, the good life. And you have lots and lots of natural tensions. They're apparent opposite. In some ways, they're interdependent, and they are dynamic over time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 1 minute to work alone and jot down the first ideas that come to you. Then we're going to take 2 minutes with the person next to you and try to expand your list. See what you've come up with, see if you can come up with more. And then we're going to take 3 minutes at your table for you to generate a list. Got it? So 1 minute now. Okay, let's hear what you've come up with. We've got some microphones around the room. We've got one here. Thank you. Just give us 1 or 2 so other people can hop on. Thank you.
All right, so we had work-life balance as a natural tendency.
So that would be, you know how we did speaking and listening? Mm-hmm. So that would be work life and?
Home life.
Home life. Ooh. Excellent, thank you.
Do you want me to do another one or no?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So we also talked about like working with a diverse group of people, like you know, there's a lot of creativity that can come from that versus like a lot of divisiveness.
Versus?
Divisiveness. Because we're also different.
All right, well, that's a tricky one there, but I'm going to take that down. Because you're right, advantages and challenges to a diverse workforce. Okay.
All right. We had one around social versus me time.
Social time versus me time, absolutely.
And then also even got to things around building a financial foundation for the future versus what might be some of those short-term, take the trip, those sorts of expenses.
Yes. All right, and short-term, like take a trip. Some people refer to that as spending money and saving money. Just simple, right? Yeah, absolutely. All these things. And notice you need both for a good life, right? And this is why I'm a little struggling with one of them. But you need a work life and you need a home life. You need social time and me time. You need to save and be financially well-founded. Is that a right word for foundation? For the future, grounded, financially grounded, that sounds better. And you want to be able to enjoy that money, take a vacation, treat yourself. What have we got?
We had 2 very interesting ones. We had planning versus being spontaneous.
Oh, yeah, planning and spontaneity, love it.
And my personal favorite is the love of food and weight control.
Love of food and weight control. Okay. Are those both good things? Do they both sound good to you? Weight control and enjoying your food? Okay. That's important. They need to be both neutral or equally positive.
Is there one on the other side?
Who's got it?
We had many of the same about money. Wait 1 second. One sec. Sit right next to you. We had many of the same home and work and spending and saving, but there were a couple that came up that we did not hear yet, which were raising kids with a partner, sort of how you may have different feelings about that. I'm not sure what the 2 different words are, but that's sort of a dilemma that sort of has sort of 2 sides. That one came up.
Okay, again, challenge. For me?
challenges, yeah, I guess of that.
Challenge for me?
And then the other one was the speed of life, experiencing, slowly and savoring versus how fast it really goes. Those were the other two that came up.
Wow, okay. You guys have come up with complicated ones. I have to say, experiencing life and how fast it goes. So let me tell you that is one of those gravity problems and possibly not a natural tension. But I could say making progress and doing a lot in life versus taking time to smell the roses. That's what you meant. I'm sure you did. Yeah, right. I'm going to just write that down. Because that is experiencing life, right? All right. And that raising kids with a partner, that's a tricky one for me to think about because, the choice to, for example, to have children or not have children, that's definitely a problem. You don't get to do both of those. You either have them or you don't have them. You decide. That's at some point in your biology, that is decided once and for all. Even if you're thinking adoption, you either do or you don't adopt. So that's a problem to be solved. Now, there are, in fact, lots of natural tensions involved in raising kids with a partner. Doing it my way, doing it their way, right? So it involves natural tensions, but in and of itself, it's not a natural tension. Same thing with DEI. In and of itself, it's not a natural tension, but boy, it involves a lot of natural tensions. So a good thing about heterogeneity is the creativity. We heard that clearly. And a good thing about homogeneity is I get to sit around in my comfort zone. Okay, now you could also argue that comfort zone itself is one of those natural tensions, like we enjoy being in it, and if we're going to grow, it's important for us to step out of it. Okay.
I have one here. We talked about comfort versus growth because growth tends to be uncomfortable.
Okay, I think that's just what I was warming up to. Comfort and growth. And did you mean personal comfort and personal growth?
I think both work, or your personal or professional.
Okay, got it. Personal and perfect. Personal and professional comfort and growth. These are fabulous, thank you. I know you have more and I'm going to stop for time. My time is whizzing away here. But I can see that you definitely have grasped the idea of a natural tension. Apparent opposites that are interdependent for whatever your goal is, in this case, to live a good life. And they're dynamic, they are managed over time. So for example, if we said work and play, we know that as children, we almost entirely play. And then there comes a point in our life when we start to feel a little imbalanced because we're Americans, and so we work so much more than we play. And then if we're lucky, and we've built our financial foundation that someone mentioned, then we get a retirement and we do more play, less work. So that's dynamic over time. And I also want to point out, again, the thing about apparent opposites, like comfort and growth, those are not literal opposites, but they are psychological opposites in the sense that we're using them for our natural tensions. We want to do these two apparently conflicting, pulling us in two different directions things. So far, so good? Okay. Now we get to the crux of it, which is for you to understand a natural tension in your own leadership style. And of course, for that, you needed to really understand what a natural tension was. So that's where we're going now. You have in front of you a reference list. There are scores of books and articles on the topic of dilemma management, and I have highlighted the ones that I thought were most relevant to you because they are related to individual, personal, and leadership dilemmas. On the reverse of that, you'll find a 4-quadrant chart, and we're going to fill it in together. What I ask is that you not get ahead, because it can get confusing and we won't have time to give you a new one and have you fix it up. So let's try to all stay together. And similarly, please try not to fall behind. It doesn't matter if you don't succeed in filling in every single blank in this page. If we move on, you move on with us and you'll fill it in later, or you won't fill it in and life will go on, it won't matter. Okay, all right, so we are going to begin at the lower left of your model, and together we're going to be filling in this mild self-criticism. Eventually, we're going to be sharing this stuff, so like if you're embezzling, don't write that down. Okay, we are only calling here for a mild self-criticism about yourself as a leader. So as a leader, we're going to fill in the blanks on, at times, I can be a bit too blank and blank. And those are adjectives or descriptors. At those times, I tend to blank, blank, and blank a little too much. Those are verbs, action words. And this causes people to perceive me as blank or blank. More adjectives, more descriptors. Take a minute to fill those in now. Bless you. How many of you need more time? Okay, we're going to move forward. The next quadrant is the upper right. The upper right is quadrant 2. At those times, I wish I could be more blank and blank. Those are adjectives and descriptors that are sort of opposite to what you wrote before. I would like to blank, blank, and blank a bit more. Those are verbs or action words that are kind of the opposite of what you're doing now. And then people would perceive me as more blank or blank. Again, adjectives or descriptors apparently opposite to what you wrote before. How many of you need more time? All right, we're going to move on. Now we're going to the upper left, quadrant 3. The good part about the style and behaviors described in 1, that would be the quadrant directly below. So you had some self-criticism, but now we're going to say the good part about the style and behaviors described in 1 below is blank. What is good about it? The benefits to me and to the organization are blank and blank. Who needs more time? Okay, we'll move on. And finally, the lower right quadrant. Overdoing the style and behaviors described in quadrant 2, the quadrant directly above it, could lead to blank. What negative consequences could come from overdoing that style that you said you might aspire to? The consequences to me and to the organization could be blank and blank. Who needs more time? Oh, we are a fast group. Okay, here's what's going to happen next. You are going to pair up with the person next to you. We're going to be doing a lot of paired work. So if you are at a table with 7 people or 9 people, would you raise your hand? Okay, can we fix that, please? Can we? One person from a 9 should move to a 7 for each of these so that you can be in pairs. I love asking people to change seats. Sometimes in an organization, leaders say to me, why is it so hard for me to make organizational change? And I want to say, did you ever ask someone to swap seats? Okay, we want paired discussions. If you're at a table with an odd number of people, please move to where you can be in a pair. Thank you, thank you. I want to give you your instructions before I lose you. That's not the end of everything. You get yourself in pairs, and here's what you're going to do as a pair. You are going to share your natural tension, your leadership dilemma, and help one another find either a neutral label for their dilemma or equally positive labels, like spending time on myself and spending time with my family. Those are both good things. Speaking and listening, both good things. If your dilemma ends up sounding like selfish and generous, that is not a natural tension, because those are not neutral, equally positive terms. So when you are helping your partner with their leadership dilemma, you're going to want to help them come up with neutral labels or equally positive ones. And if you really get stumped, you can raise your hand. Okay, now go. Thank you, everybody. I can tell that you're having wonderful conversations, but of course I can't tell what they're about. I'm hoping you all figured out that your natural tension is the left side of your problem compared to the right. Yes, because each side has something good about it and something not good about it. If you didn't, now you know, and you can have a couple more minutes to think about it that way. But two things. One, I want to remind you that there are two of you, and so you each need a turn to talk about your natural tensions. So keep that in mind. And the other thing is, remember, the goal is to come up with labels, not just to understand them and admire the dilemma, but also to label them, because it makes it easier to conceptualize if you have language around it. Some of you may have completely finished and nailed this exercise where both of you have discovered your natural tension. Would you, if that's you, would you show yourself? Okay, so I'd say it looks like, I don't know, maybe a third at most. So I'm going to give you some more time. If you're one of the people who has succeeded at this, feel free to help someone else at your table who may be struggling. So if you're struggling, give a little wave so you can be seen by your table mates, and they might be able to give you a hand. So the left side versus the right side, I know you've talked about it in the order we did it, but if you divide it that way, it might become clearer what your natural tension is. I'll give you some more time. Thank you, thank you. You are a cooperative crowd. I would like to collect some natural tensions. So those of you who have been able to come up, perhaps, with some neutral labels or equally positive ones for the two sides of your dilemma, I would love to hear them. I see a hand over there. Hang on, a mic is coming to you.
Listening and self-advocating.
Listening and?
Self-advocating, being able to speak up.
Listening and self-advocating. Okay. Sometimes you listen too much and you don't stand up for yourself. Okay. I love that as a natural tension, both really good things. All right, what else do we have? Yes.
I put involved and boundaries.
Oh, tell us what that means.
Coming up with the most neutral phrases. I think it's just, wanting to provide oversight or, get into things without getting over control or like jumping in too much and doing it for one person, but then also setting up boundaries on the other side to let people grow and be able to.
I love that. Thank you. And before I move on, I want to ask, first I want to ask, it is possible that others of you experience the dilemma of being a good listener and advocating for yourself. If you experience that dilemma, show yourself. Okay, that was more than half the room, so I want you to see in what good company you were. And now this next one, involved and boundaries, where on the one hand it was providing oversight and control, and on the other hand it was stepping back for other people to grow. I'm guessing that others of you wrote this same natural tension but gave it a different name. Yeah, okay, what did you call yours?
Asking versus telling.
Asking and telling. Great. Who else had that same natural tension but called it something else? Okay, I like that one, and it sounds different to my ears. Was it the same as being involved and oversight and setting boundaries so that other people could grow? That's how it started, and then it ended up as? Ah, got it, got it. Okay, thank you, got it. How many of you experience this dilemma at work between being over-involved, get too much oversight versus stepping back and letting other people do it? Show yourself. Okay, I'm going to say that's most of the room. All right, so very interesting. How many of you actually wrote about that very natural tension just now? Okay. What did you call it? Love it. Leading from in front and leading from behind. Great. Do you notice how all of these are equally positive? All right? And there were some over here. Yes, what did you have? Wait. Here comes a microphone.
I am running over to you.
Wait, don't tell me.
I was trying to project. We called it ownership versus collaboration.
Ownership and cooperation.
So take ownership, lead the project or whatever, versus involving others more and work more collaboratively. So ownership versus collaboration, but I think at the core
collaboration, thank you. Thank you. I just didn't get the word exactly right. Ownership and collaboration. Yeah, that ring true for a lot of people. Any other great, there's one right behind you.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, I had a little different spin on that, so I had collaboration versus decisiveness.
Okay, and you are on the opposite side in your natural tendency, right? Yeah, you are very collaborative, and sometimes you think you need to be more decisive. And both of those are good things, and you all saw that both of them had benefits. We have one more hand here. Raise it high for Laura. There you go.
Mine is doing versus teaching. Leading by doing and leading by teaching.
Love it. Okay, love it. Leading by doing and leading by teaching. These are great, you guys. These are fabulous. Fabulous. Love that. Who wrote about a natural tension completely different, not on the topic of I step forward and I'm the leader, or I step back and allow others to grow and we work collaboratively? I see some hands over there. Microphone coming.
I had passionate versus measured.
Passion and measured. Wow, tell us about that.
Just like being over enthusiastic about something that being enthusiastic about something that I have ownership of or feel strongly about versus pausing, waiting, and then reacting.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Do you know, I heard, while we're getting our next one, I heard someone earlier today talk about being too empathic. And I thought, isn't that interesting? I'll bet that person has a natural tension, because empathy is definitely a positive. And what I heard was, on the other side, sometimes, and you used the term self-advocacy or stepping up and being assertive, is also positive. And those are not literal opposites, but they can feel that way. Did we have one more that was on a different subject? We have one over there. Microphone.
Okay, really, I'm sitting at your table.
I had being a thinker versus a feeler, so thinking of things too much from a rational perspective, perhaps, as a natural tension.
Okay, thinker and feeler. Who else had thinker and feeler but called it something different? You did. What did you call it?
I wrote about being direct versus being warm and fuzzy.
Direct? I love it. Direct versus being warm and fuzzy. Okay, how many of you experience the natural tension of being direct versus being warm and fuzzy? Okay, so the reason I invite you to show yourself is so that we can see the natural tensions that we as individuals are facing are actually leadership dilemmas. They are very common among people who lead. So you are not alone in these. And one of the most important things to discover about them is that these are not faults. You do not have faults. You experience the same leadership dilemma as every other leader in the world. And we have to manage those. So we're going to work on that next. So, sorry about that bell. So with your same partner, all right, I want you to now think about your dilemma chart in the other direction. Now you're going to think about the top as compared to the bottom. And I want you to, I'm going to give you instructions, but you're going to work toward managing the leadership dilemma that you identified with whatever labels you gave it. So the first thing you're going to do is select one behavior from quadrant 2. That would be the upper right on your matrix. One behavior, so that's one of the verbs in the middle, that you would like to increase, and please circle it. The one behavior you would like to increase. And now what you're going to do with the help of your partner is plan an experiment to try this behavior while holding on to the benefits of your opposite behavior. So you're going to try the behavior you circled in quadrant 2 while holding on to the benefits you wrote down in the upper left, quadrant 3. Now let me tell you something about an experiment. An experiment is not something that you're already doing that's going great. That is not an experiment. An experiment is not something that you tried once and it was a disaster and you're never doing it again. That is not an experiment. An experiment is something you're not doing, you haven't tried, you think it might work, and so you design how you can do it. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to take 5 minutes with our partner, maybe 10, and we're going to design an experiment to try this new behavior while we're still holding on to the good parts, the benefits of our most natural behavior. You might like to think about what success looks like when you're designing this experiment. Is it going to be that you spoke up at a meeting once and you did it nicely and everyone said thank you? Is that good enough? Is it something that you're going to try for a month and see if it's reliable? If it doesn't work the first time, are you going to scrap it? Or can you go back, tweak your experiment, and try it again? So think about what success looks like and try to design an experiment that you don't know if it will work, but you hope it will be successful. People, I hate interrupting these discussions. I can see how lively they are. So what I need to say is, well, how many of you succeeded, like are leaving today with an experiment? Oh, congratulations. You have a plan to manage a leadership development. How many of you think you'd actually like to try this when you get back to the office? The experiment you even better. I mean, this was a demonstration, but if you've got something you can actually implement, fabulous. Would you like an accountability partner? Someone who says, did you do it? How did it go? Yes, I see some head nods. Before you leave or at break, be sure to exchange contact information with the partner who worked with you, and you can call one another a week from now, a month from now, whatever you agree, and check, did you do it? How did it go? The other thing is that all of you have my business card on the table. They're in a little pile in the center, so you can find them. Feel free to contact me. I tried the experiment. Here's what happened. Here's the trick I ran into. I'm happy to answer a phone call, an email. Get in touch. I'd be happy to help you out. So it's time for me to move on to Q&A. And I am going to be delighted to answer whatever questions you have about how do you know if it's a natural tension or a problem? What other leadership dilemmas can you help me with? I don't know, whatever you're worrying about, what's for dinner tonight. So I'm happy to answer all your questions, but before I do, I just want to give a big thank you to Maria Dowdy for having me here today. My biggest thanks to Laura Jaffe, who worked so closely with me to make all this possible, to Deb Boyda for that lovely introduction she gave me this morning. I am so grateful to the people at TCN for allowing me to do my greatest passion, which is using psychological science to make highly motivated women more successful and fulfilled. And with that, I am happy to take your questions.
Hello. Obviously, even in this room, there was a lot of recurring themes and recurring it's here, I'm here.
Thank you.
That we've observed, and I'm sure you see that many times over in your presentations and talking to audiences. Can you talk to us and maybe identify two super common tensions and two very efficient experiments that address those?
I cannot tell you the best experiments. You have the formula, and they'll come again in your slides, for the way to do experiments, which is to choose something that you'd like to be doing while holding on to the benefits of what you're doing now. But I would say the very most common tension I hear about from leaders is around maintaining the mission, vision, quality of the work, all those things the way I see it, and empowering others to develop their own perspectives, ways of working, and furthering their ideas for how to do things. So I'd say it's that I'm maintaining control and I'm empowering others. Because we have this goal to drive for quality, for success, and so there is this feeling like if I don't keep charge of it, it might not be the best that it could be. I don't know where we, who so often lack confidence, come up suddenly with the feeling that if we don't do it, it won't be right. Versus empowering our team. Let them go. They know what the vision is. See what they do with it. Maybe it's going to be something completely different. Oh, horrors, it's going to be completely different. Could be great. So I'd say that's the most common one. And then the other ones have to do around, I have a short-term focus, I have something to deliver now, but it's actually not the most important thing for the long term of my organization, for the long term of my business, and yet I'm sucked in the now. So it's the taking care of the present, the urgent, the now, and carving out that time. No, I have to focus on the big picture, the long run, what's really important and will matter. So I would say those two are really big. Yes, a microphone will come. But you might have to wait a second.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. This has been a really interesting exercise and a little bit different spin on the natural tension question. So what I've observed in my career in organizations is that there are often tensions. It could be between business units or between a function and a business unit, and neither are wrong. And so do you have any tips as a leader in trying to sit sometimes with those tensions or encourage them to be resolved?
Yes. Well, I could do an hour on conflict management, but I don't have that. I would say to bring the units together and have them each talk to each other about what their brief is. What is it they need to be doing, that they have been charged by the organization with doing and getting done, and then have each group recognize in what way, because I don't know your situation, in what way those things are in tension. And make sure that what you're talking about is a natural tension and not a problem. So for example, sometimes when people talk about sales and marketing, which really does involve legitimate natural tensions, they end up talking about the fixed pot of money that they're sharing. That's a problem. Okay, so that's different. When you're talking about resources, you're talking about problems. But there are other business unit differences that really do represent natural tensions. And sometimes they're short-term, long-term tensions. Sorry, I don't know where the mic is now. Oh, here. But we had a person at this table. One is coming. Hold on.
Thank you.
Okay.
This has been super interesting. So sitting in a room of all women, I just have to ask the question, are there leadership dilemmas that you hear more about from women versus men?
The leadership dilemmas that you shared today are shared across men as well. So I would have to say, I'm sure we have life dilemmas that are different than men's, but in the context of a business, I would say we have these leadership dilemmas in common. Is there something you were thinking of? Just curious. Just curious. No, it's a great question.
You know, sometimes you hear about women maybe not being as confident. Women not being as confident or being more collaborative or what have you than men might be as leaders. And so I was just curious as to whether, you know, some maybe stick out to you that would be, okay, more gender specific, I guess.
I see where you're going. Here's an interesting thing to remember. Our natural tensions have two sides. So it is very common, even in a room of women, to hear people say, you know, it's between my directiveness and my collaboration. And they're saying my natural tension is to be directive. That's how I got to my position in the company. But there may be the case that there are women who are leaning more on the other side, and they're saying, I am so collaborative, and the people above me are saying, come on, get it done, you know, make whatever. So what you might think about is, might the same leadership tensions we talked about, might sometimes our natural tendency be more on one side than on the other side? That might represent some kind of gendered difference. But in the end, the whole point of understanding natural tensions is that we want to get the best of both. I'm not telling anyone to switch from being directive to being collaborative. I'm saying, when are you best served by being one or the other? At what stage in a project can you move from one to the other? Some people start in one place and move to the other, and vice versa. So the essential message is that both are equally good, but they need to be in balance. We don't want to do just one of them, or we get the negative consequences that are below the line in our quadrant model. Yours will be the last question.
I think this is a follow-up to what you're speaking about. I'm thinking about how social identities, we talked about gender, but race and cultural background and other identities that we bring may lead us to be rewarded or punished for showing up in certain ways. And that feeds into the tension at personal cost to some individuals more than others. So could you speak to that and how you would advise we navigate that?
Wow. Wow. With my 1 minute left, you have opened up Pandora's box. That is true. That is absolutely true, that society places expectations on us. How powerful can we be in a room if we are female, if we are gender nonconforming, if we speak with an accent, if we are a person of color? Absolutely. There become these overlays that reflect how much power can we show up with. And so yes, that tips the tension in a particular situation. And if you are decently placed, you can balance it in a great way elsewhere. How do I behave at an all-hands meeting? How do I behave in my team meetings, in my one-on-ones? Does that help? Totally, I get what you're saying. All right, thank you for that question. That was an important one. I want to leave you with some conclusions. First, most leadership dilemmas represent natural tensions. How do I know that? If they were problems, you would have solved them by now. But they keep recurring. They gnaw at you all the time because they are not solvable. You have to manage them in balance forever. We all need to balance our strengths with their opposites. You may take tests that are strengths finders. You may be told to lean into your strengths. This is a trap. What you are best at could be your greatest liability. You want to make sure you balance your strengths with their apparent opposites. And finally, dilemma management is a superpower. If you can learn to manage your own natural tensions, then you can help the people you supervise to manage their natural tensions. You can help your team manage its natural tensions. You can help your organization, and let me tell you, organizations have major natural tensions. Are we going to centralize? Are we going to decentralize? Are we going to focus on cost reduction, or are we going to focus on quality improvement? You know, these are all natural tensions. So once you understand about natural tensions and know how to read them, they scale up from the individual to the interpersonal, to the group, to the organizational, to the political world. And I won't go there. But our natural tensions scale up, and if you get good at this for yourself, really, the sky's the limit. Dilemma management is a superpower. For being here today with you, I just feel a little bit wiser. If you feel a little bit wiser too, show yourself. Thank you.
My name is Yanni Gordon, and I have the privilege of chairing the Launchpad event. And so I want to just thank Maria and Laura and Ellen for their support, and also the Launchpad committee members, because we can't do this without everybody's efforts. So round of applause for the committee. Thank you. And I am so excited to introduce our next speaker, Ellen Taaffe. And I'm sure that this morning, and what a great, impactful morning, has caused all of us to reflect a bit on our own lives and our own journeys. So I want you to think a moment about your first job. I know maybe many of us did babysitting, but you know, as a teenager, we probably had that first job. And think about that, because I think that really kind of sets a tone for who we are today. We all have our own journeys and different paths. So Ellen's first job was in Fort Lauderdale as a teenager, and she worked at the Cricket store, which was the premier swimwear store in Fort Lauderdale, where she grew up. And I'm sure that the 50% discount helped a lot. It was a big motivator for you, Ellen. But she also learned a lot from the woman who owned 4 of the stores in that area. Another milestone moment in all of our lives might be a defining moment that kind of changed the way we approach things in our lives. And so I want you to think about that too. So Ellen shared with me that one of the most defining moments in her career was when she had a big job, had 2 daughters under the age of 3, and she found herself getting burned out and trying to do it all. And she learned to set boundaries and to ask for what she really needed at the time, and that was more time. So Ellen became the first vice president at PepsiCo to get a reduced flexible schedule, which was back to 40 hours instead of 60 hours, which I'm sure many of us can identify with. Ellen, thank you. But it was what she needed to revitalize herself, her marriage, and family, and allowed her to take on an even bigger role once she was able to get back to full-time, which is more than 40 hours a week, I'm sure. So she learned the importance of reflecting on what matters most and what is and is not working, and taking action to get to a better place. In addition to previously holding senior leadership roles at PepsiCo, Royal Caribbean, and the Whirlpool Corporation, Ellen is an author and a clinical associate professor of management and organizations at the Kellogg School of Management, where she teaches personal leadership insights and is the director of the Women's Leadership Program. And I can't think of a more appropriate speaker to talk to us about breaking through that mirrored door. So, Ellen Taaffe.
Thank you, Yanni. Thank you. Now I know what you were going to do with those questions that you asked me, so thank you. So, as you heard, I grew up in Fort Lauderdale. It was before the, the time of smartphones and streaming and even structured programming, classes and sports and all those kinds of things. And we would just go out and play. And one of my favorite things to do was to play sports with my 3 older brothers. Now, I had an older sister and a younger sister too, but I was the one who loved to play with the boys. And, it was something I loved doing, but I will tell you that as I got to the tween years, my chance of playing with the boys was kind of dwindling. It was sort of like the boys always play with the boys and the girls always played with the boys. And I was very into sports at that time. But one really memorable day, I was included. It was sort of like the neighborhood was figuring out, okay, we want to go out and do a rematch for this epic baseball/softball game that we played in front of our houses. And I got to be on the team with my brothers. So I was just thrilled. Gorgeous day in Fort Lauderdale. We were, playing and doing pretty well until Timmy pulled his stunt. And Timmy was my next door neighbor who would frequently have a different assessment of being called out. Now, he was called out by both sides, and he didn't like that, so he took his pricey bat and ball home. So we quickly got together with our sort of ragtag equipment that we had, and we got to play. Now, fortunately, one of those things was to play with a tennis ball. So if you've ever played baseball or softball, hitting with a tennis ball can go far, which really came in handy when the score was tied and we were at the bottom of the 9th inning and I was up to bat. And there were 2 outs and I swung and I got all the way to third base. Again, tennis ball. Now on third base, my brothers started to scream to me like, "Steal home, steal home." And I would like try and the pitcher just would like psych me out because there was no way I was going to lose this game, especially because I barely ever got to play with this group. And the next person got up to bat, the next guy, he was able to hit the ball and they were going after it. And I just started to run for the older people in the room, my chariots of fire, run home. Like, and I'm feeling like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. And out of nowhere, Timmy comes out and starts to block me like a football player. I mean, he's literally like, I can't get around him. And they're like, go, 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 come on, Ellen, go. And I'm trying to get home to home base. And all of a sudden, my little 12-year-old self punched him. And I am just, that's the second time I've gotten applause. The first time was with all the other boys. Because Timmy deserved it over time. But I will have to tell you, and if you knew me, you would know that is the one punch I've ever thrown in my life. But I punched him and I made it home. And we won the game. We got another run came in as well. So we won the game. I was just thrilled. I felt like, I was figuratively on my brother's shoulders. I was really I felt like I earned my place on the team and I'm gonna earn my place. I'm gonna get to play again because I led to the victory there. I don't know where Timmy went, but I was pretty thrilled. And eventually I realized I need to go back inside to help set the table. And I came inside and said, "Hey, Mom, guess what?" And I saw her standing there with a dour look on her face and the telephone wire swinging from the wall. Back in the day, that's how it worked, from our kitchen wall. And I think you know what happened. She just hung up the phone with Timmy's mom. He did have braces, which was that's a whole other challenging part of the story. But she looked at me and said, "A lady doesn't fight. A lady doesn't fight." And that was really ingrained with me. I mean, she was right in many ways, but it was a big lesson, a big message for me. And I share that with you because our messages really matter. You heard that in some of the questions today, in the wonderful programming that we've already had. But messages matter, and they stay with us. Sometimes we don't even realize that they stay with us underneath it all. Now, fortunately, I also got wonderful messages from my parents, like, you can do anything you set your mind to with hard work and education. My parents didn't go to college, all 6 of us did, but it became an expectation, and this idea of hard work gets you there. So we get lots of wonderful messages too, and messages designed mainly to help protect us, to help us navigate through life. And I'm gonna be asking you to think about what messages you got about success, about how to get along, about how to fit in, about how to move forward. They may be in some ways about a gender, but it may not be too. But these messages really matter to us. And you know what, I will tell you my journey to getting to this book, but part of it was understanding what are the messages that girls got, that boys got, what messages stay with us too. And it's really, I find this to be really important because it's like the other sessions today too, it's about reflecting, you know, who are we and how do we see ourselves? And it doesn't mean those things stick forever, but they evolve. And some of the messages that we get that are so helpful to us are about cultivating relationships. We know how to go deeper. Even in this room today, the very first time you were asked to talk at your table, it was hard to even get you to stop. I wish I had that bell up here when I get you to start talking too. But we know how to go deeper. We know how to connect. We know how to cultivate relationships. We get a message of look and be good. You might have heard, even in your adult life, in your workplace, are you okay? You're not smiling. Because there is that expectation. We have it of ourselves too, as well as that's what we, you know, other people expect of us too. And there is very much, especially in younger generations of women, it's like prioritize getting that approval, especially in school, and delivering that with hard work as well. So I have been fascinated by some research out of Georgetown that also talked about the relationship that girls have with other girls growing up and boys with other boys. And we know that we tend to get socialized with our same gender and learn kind of a girl code of how to make that work. And you know, there's obviously other things that change that help us, but some of the core things that they found in this research is that these messages start really early, and we find ourselves learning to really cooperate, to connect, to make sure that we're doing well, looking good, but don't talk about it too much, so avoiding superiority as well. Very much a stay safe. Don't take too many risks. You even can see this today on a playground with girls and boys, and there's very much still a bit of the having a girl stay safe. And of course, part of that, it's all about protecting us and helping us, but we learn those messages too. And then some form of be a lady, be good, be altruistic, be mannerly, be polite as well. And in contrasting that, they looked at boys and what they learned as well. And they very much have a compete style of relating to each other, very much like a one-upmanship. That, you know, I have daughters, but I can imagine for a little guy, that must be really hard. But it helps them to to try things before they know that they can do that, which is one of the things that we don't always learn as girls. We learn to be certain, to really look good, to be perfect many of the times. And boys learn to show strengths. And with that comes taking risks, moving forward before they're ready. A bit of a learning fake it till you make it in a good way, in moving forward into action. And of course, the be a man. So the man up culture starts early too. So what I would like you to do is reflect on what messages, and I'm barely going to give you much time to do this so we can get through everything today. But be thinking of what are those messages. And sometimes we have conflicting messages too. I will tell you 2 of my conflicts. One is, don't be a braggart. That was really strong in my household. But yet, I also would hear my mom say, Ellen, you have to toot your own horn. So I kind of got both, and I think that was something that always sort of stayed with me and something that was hard for me as I was out in my corporate roles and things like that. How do I share what I've accomplished? So just very quickly at your table, I want you to write down, reflect your own, what are some of those messages that you got? And then I'm going to ask you to share those at your table. But take 2 minutes now just to make your list. I know you could generate more of those, and you can do that later too. And I think you may have a handout on the table that this is the first reflection and message. Similar to the last session, stay with me on these ones. But I would say take your table and cut it in half. So that may be you're in groups of 3 or 4, but just share some of those messages. And in particular, if you have a sense of how they have impacted you then and even now. So I'll just give you a few minutes to do that, and then I'll ask for a few from the audience as well. So go ahead, talk amongst yourselves. What were some of those messages? We have some mics here, but if you're not close to a mic, you can call it out, and I will try to get it out to everyone. What were some of those messages?
Demonstrate value and knowledge, but don't come across like a know-it-all.
Great. Demonstrate value and knowledge, but don't come across as a know-it-all. I don't know if I got every word right, but yes. Great. What else? Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
The message that I couldn't move past that I received today and received throughout childhood is tough shit. So if there's
tough shit.
If there's a problem,
yeah.
If you're having a bad feeling, tough shit was the tagline that I received.
Tagline, I love it.
It was enduring, right?
Yeah.
And you're meant to have some powerlessness, but I do think it taught resiliency and it shows up with like low empathy when sensitivity is presented.
Yeah. So it gave you a lot of resilience, and it also maybe set some expectations too. So like many things. Back here.
Stay on that, sorry. On the profanity.
We'll go here and then there.
On the profanity theme is the RBF. I think that is very much, if you aren't smiling, if you look angry, it's assumed you're angry or you're dissatisfied with something, constantly being evaluated on what your face is telling others.
Yes, and I like that you are a lady while you do this. So in case anyone didn't hear that, resting bitch face. And I would just call out that there's no real male equivalent to that term. So it is very much like a why aren't you smiling kind of thing. I think we had another one over here.
I think one of the most positive and persistent messages I got was the value of education, that you do this for yourself, not for me as a parent. And that was something that was very clearly stated to me repeatedly, and I do believe it's shaped me.
Yeah, and is that like make your parents proud? Is that what you meant? Or no, do it for yourself.
Yeah, you're doing it for yourself.
Okay, great, so very empowering. Yeah, very good. So we'll have one more.
All right, thank you. One of the messages that I heard a lot was
look out for yourself because no one else will.
Yeah.
And I think if you take that to an extreme, you can really lose the value of mentorship, of networking, et cetera. And I think for me, it took me a long time in my career to overcome that there's a place for self-advocacy, but there's also a place for community and network support.
Yeah, like our last presentation, there's double edges to these things, and they're given to us in such a well-intentioned way, and you know, sometimes they're not even said explicitly, but we pick up on things, you know, and we see things like what it's like to be a good mom, or you know, there's all kinds of other things too that are with us as well. So one of the big ones is about hard work and education. I'm not the only one who received that one too, but early on we see in the research too that girls really attach to school in a big way. And when you think of it, it's about like the hard work that you can put into it. It's very clear what you have to do. There's criteria. And you know, those gold stars really feel pretty good to get those. Whether they're, you know, gold stars or turning into AP classes or, you know, getting into certain schools, all that kind of stuff. It's certainly important to boys too, but we really start to see a shift that like doing well in school is your golden ticket, especially as women are moving through the workforce too. So, you know, so we arrive eager and ambitious usually to start our careers after being told so often, you can do anything you want to do, or, you know, like, boy, to be a young woman today is really so powerful. You have so much opportunity too. But something has happened on the way to the C-suite. So we go from 70% of US valedictorians are young women to 7% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. And it happens, you know, the McKinsey Lean-In report, the new one came out. We still have this broken rung of women not getting, there's a gap between getting that first-time manager level positions. So there's all kinds of other things that play into this as well. But I also believe that attachment to school, then when we go into the gray areas of the workplace, make it really hard. There's no rubric. We may be working for someone that helps us to understand how does it work in this organization, but we don't always have that. We don't have the clarity that we had in school. And so often, when we face challenges, we think it must be me, or it must be me and I'm alone, when it's really common across, in particular, for women. I'm not saying on any of this that it's not hard for men as well. But this happens early in our career, but it happens when we move into new positions, new industries. So sadly, you know, some of these things still stay with us even when we're at senior levels, when we face this kind of adversity, especially after having so much high achievement in school or early on in our careers too. So for me, the origin of my book started at Kellogg. You know, I had this corporate career. I go in and I always thought I'll teach marketing one day. I'm teaching leadership and designing leadership programs. And in my very first orientation that I was seeing, the student orientation for MBA students, I was just like, oh, this is so great. The atmosphere is full of possibility. This gorgeous auditorium. There's, you know, several hundred students there. And a female CEO told her story to the group, opened it up to questions, and all the hands that shot up that day were male hands, not one from a woman. And it was about a third of the class. This was a one-year MBA full-time program. And I thought, what gives? This was not that long ago. This is like 7 years ago, I think. So not that long ago. And I thought, I know to get into this school, they're super smart. They've accomplished a lot. I know they have this. Why are they holding back? And to be honest with you, it took me back to my own MBA orientation when I didn't raise my hand, and neither did the very few women in the room. at that time. But that was 25 years earlier. So it led me into this. I thought it'd be different with this generation, and maybe it's not about generations, maybe it is about gender. And that really led me into looking at all the research and trying to see what is it that this dynamic that we would hold back? Because I'm sure those women in that room had great questions. Now, I've instituted a women's welcome event that is before that orientation, so this is not an issue now, but it is for us so often in a meeting room or that research that you likely know that women feel like they need 10 of 10 of the criteria to go for the jobs, and the guys don't. So it led me to create this metaphor, coined the mirror door. And it's this dynamic of when we are facing opportunity, as small as raising our hand or going for the big job or confronting an issue, when we have an opportunity and we reflect inward and think, I'm not ready or I'm not worthy to move into action. Or like, oh, my question's stupid. Or I don't want to take that risk. And it's really this idea so often that this reflection, this mirror door, is a distorted view. And part of it is because we hold ourselves to these crazy sky-high expectations. You know you all do it. You know you all do it. These sky-high, and I do it too. Sky-high expectations. We also have had so much success creating certainty that helps us to feel ready. And so when something is inherently uncertain, it's easy to hold back. The default can be holding back. And we have a lot of judgment. Certainly fear the judgment of others, but we have a lot of self-judgment in a harsher way than anyone else would likely think. It's as if we think these risks are so much bigger than they really are. Really, if I asked a question in this room, would it, and it came flat, no one really built on it, I survived. But we don't think of that in the moment. And so often we believe that we're not ready or worthy to take on that opportunity. And that's really what this book is all about. But I have to say, I have a whole chapter on it about the workplaces like navigating a mirrored maze, where the mirror door pops up a lot. How things get rewarded, how things get decided, and it can feel like a tough place to navigate, to find our way. Because so often we are held back by systemic issues. And in a workplace, in many places, in most places maybe, that was designed for a different employee population, for a different time. I don't blame anyone, I just think we are where we are on this as well. And there's all these kind of rooted things in the past that you think like, black and white, I mean, my daughters will not watch a black and white movie. But you think these old things of women as caregivers, as women on a pedestal, and when we fall off that pedestal, the fall is greater. So we've seen some of those backlash, or men as protectors and women as needing protection and all of that. And some of these things really surfaced in a bigger way as part of the pandemic as well. The whole caregiving thing that we sort of saw much more exposed. So I say that to say that we may be locked out and are locked out from due to a lot of systemic issues, but we may also be getting in our own way. We may also be locking ourselves in place. So I transitioned to some success strategies similar. I have to say, thank you, Laura and Maria, the setup today from the earlier presentations, the idea of there's things that work for us but can work against us too, I see that in a lot of our behaviors, and I've come up with 5 of them, that each one of them is powerful but also has a peril to it, and there's ways we can pivot out of it. And I'm gonna actually also, thank you, Jackie, ask you to do some experiments in your life post this session. But so these are the 5 perils. What I'm gonna do is very quickly go through and talk about how they are powerful for us, but also what is sort of the unintended consequence that could happen, and how sometimes that impacts our identity at work. It sometimes impacts us personally, but it also can impact us professionally from a reputation standpoint. And then I'm going to have you come together and reflect on what resonates the most for you of these. And you might have several resonate, or they used to, or something that you're facing now. And at lunchtime, which is coming soon, but not yet. But lunchtime, I'll have you talk through what resonates, how does it show up for you, and what have you tried, or what might you suggest to each other on these two. So I'll hit them quickly. Preparing to perfection. This is that person who, or that tendency to deliver excellence, to be the go-to person, to be the person that has all the right answers, and frequently it's done through a ton of preparation. And what happens is, over time, we don't have all the preparation time we once did, and expectations rise. So our plates get fuller, expectations rise, and we're asked to make decisions. We're asked to do more with less of all the analysis or all the pre-work or all the things that we did before. And when we are stuck in, no, I have to do it all through preparation, or I have to do all that perfection, we can be seen as someone who can't decide, who can't move forward or take a risk. The way this plays out is I'll hear someone say, I don't get it, I did all the right things, and I suddenly feel like I'm plateauing in my organization. There's a huge amount of stress with this because we get that preparation is a crutch, and we don't always realize we are much more ready. We're more ready than you think. I'm going to say that repeatedly today to move forward with a recommendation here on this. This is what the reputational challenge with this is. This is the person who comes across as like, I think of her as more of a worker bee, not the leader of the team. That's where you don't want to be. And so that's where on all of these, to keep the strength, similar to the topic earlier, keep the strength of this, but how do we pivot into evaluating risks, to asking for help, to prioritizing? And we'll get into some of those ways to pivot. The next one is eagerly pleasing. These are the people we want who just like, they're the glue that holds the team together. They know how to read a room and read people, and are that super collaborative, just kind of that person that everyone wants to work with frequently. What happens here is when this is also being so other-oriented that we sometimes lose ourselves in it, in our own opinions, and we hold back in saying what needs to be said sometimes. We hold back in giving feedback sometimes. And part of it is rooted in it is a fear of not being liked, or of rocking the boat and upsetting other people. And we have this like, this is a bit exaggerated here, but not entirely, because sometimes underneath it all, we are worried about what that reaction is going to be. When the reality is, this tendency helps us to build great relationships. And the reality is that our relationships has the bandwidth to be able to raise our opinions, to confront, to give feedback, as long as we tap into the care that we have. This is a really caring kind of tendency too. The third one is fitting the mold. And this is someone who has great agility to go into a workplace and sort of know what's expected, and really accommodating what's expected by being that, by fitting the mold. And many times you're sort of assessing that in recruitment and all that, but what happens is if we fit the mold too much and it's not, we lose our authenticity, and it can seed doubt of like, did they hire the real me? And the organization, if we're not, sharing our diverse perspective or the things that we can contribute, we could be, the organization loses too. On this one, I walked in here today and I'm like, I'm the only one wearing red, and this is a very muted, dark, so I saw, where are you? I said, thank you for wearing red when I saw you. But I wear red a lot when I present because I was told years ago, don't wear red. And I didn't, and then I eventually did. But I was told that's not the way to stand out. And now, that was back in the day, but I will tell you, I've done a lot of presentations since this book came out last October. And I usually, about every few presentations, someone comes up to me and says, I was told not to wear red. And it's not that it's like PepsiCo saying, don't wear Coca-Cola red. It's not that, but it's fitting the mold. But one of the people I talk about in the book is a former student, Pam, who had interned at a company, got the offer, wanted to go back to the company, and all summer, she wanted to work for the company, but she was a black woman, didn't see anyone wearing their natural hair. And she thought, like, I want to be able to do that. I've done that for 2 years here at Kellogg. I didn't do that before I came here, and I want to be who I really am. And so this one is really almost a conversation with yourself. Am I up for this kind of culture? Do I want to be a pioneer in it? Do I want to be a change maker? Or I don't believe that I want to do this. And so it's a real evaluation is there a mold? Is it expanding? I have gone on a board where I was the only woman, and I did it because I believed that they did want to change. And now we have a diverse board in multiple ways beyond just gender. But there are times where it's like, I've been in a culture where I also my style didn't fit. I didn't believe I could be successful here. But when we sacrifice too much of ourselves and it feels like we're selling our soul, that is nothing but stress and feeling like, and playing small in a way. So that's where you might be looking for another job in this one too. So it's all about that assessment. The fourth one is pushing pedal to the metal. And this is really about someone who has a tendency to drive forward. Many times they are doing that ahead of their team. So the comment I hear on this one is, I feel like I've lost my team. The comment from management, is this person so tough or so direct, will anyone want to work for them? So it's a bit of some of the comments before. The eagerly pleasing might be considered too soft. Hey, that was what was hung on me early in my career. Not too early, but there's also another side of this. So this is really the solution here is to pause and reconnect with your team. Still be who you are, but share your why. This is also the one that I hear the most burnout comes from this one. So there's also a need to pause with yourself to come back to this. So there's my burnout. And then the last one is patiently performing. And this is really awaiting to be noticed. And with this, this is this belief that I'll be taken care of. I'm like the hard worker, I'm performing well, and what can happen all of a sudden is like, what gives? I'm just as good as that person, but the squeaky wheel got the grease. So often it is a reluctance to share who like what you've accomplished, what you've contributed, and it's so important to really shift and understand it's collaborative career planning here. So when we hold back, we are the ones who are invisible. And I will tell you, from managing many people, there are our peers, men are going in and asking for the job, the raise, the best project, and the corner office or whatever that is. And good for them. We need to do a bit more of that as well. So I'm going to ask you by a show of hands, what strategy most resonates with you? And you may feel several of them, but I'm just looking for what's the one that most resonates. And just by a show of hands, preparing to perfection. As Jackie would say, show yourself. Okay, quite a bit. Eagerly pleasing. That's in my top 2. Okay, fitting the mold. Me early. Okay, lesson here. Pushing pedal to the metal. Quite a few in here. And performing patiently. Okay, a lot of that as well. So what I would like you to do is think of, that one that resonates the most, your operating style in that strategy, and just reflect on what makes you successful, what about that tendency makes you successful, and what challenges or risks do you currently have or could be on the horizon. And I'd ask you to take a few minutes to do that now. They're going to start to serve. So I know it's a little bit challenging with all the things on the table, but let's let them do their jobs while you're reflecting. And then we're going to come back together at 1 o'clock. But during the lunch hour, I'm going to want you to share your success strategy and discuss, how does that take shape for you? And if you have ideas at the table, come on in with those. Thank you. Ideas at the table, please share and give each other advice. I'm going to come back and tell you some of the ideas that I have as well, and I'll want to hear some of yours. So what we are going to do now is move into, so what can you do about some of those things that we just talked about? The idea of how do we keep the powerful side of what has made us successful, but how do we mitigate some of the potential risks that are in many ways unintended consequences that could be happening as well. So I want to start with asking you to create a goal. And I'm going to, similarly to Jackie, talk about experiments, because I think all these things, you got to try a new way. It's sort of building our agility, which was one of the parts of self-management that Carol talked to earlier today. So it's building our agility to be who we are, but recognize I want to also be effective. I also want to show them what I want in my future too, and get after some of the things we want in our careers too. So I'd ask you to think about what's an area or two that you want to work on in the next 3 months. And I say 3 months because I want you to get started tomorrow, next week, with taking some small steps that build bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I want you to think about that. I think this is really part of some of the discussions you might have had at lunchtime too. But what are those areas you want to focus on? And where do you maybe need help? Maybe that is, someone said earlier or asked a question about an accountability partner. Maybe you need to get feedback. Maybe there are people at your table that you can connect with and just brainstorm with. So I want you to know that you can try to do this alone, but you might even be more powerful to be doing it in concert and collaboration with other people as well. So I'm going to go through each one of those strategies and share some ideas with you that I think have worked with other people and have worked for myself as well. But I also want to hear what came up at your tables. Like, were there other pieces of advice that you got or other things that you'd suggest? For some of you, these things might have been something that was like really strong for you in the past. So the first one in the preparing to perfection is really about asking for help and prioritizing where we put our time and effort and energy. This is all about, you've likely heard progress over perfection. We hear that a lot, or the enemy of good, those kinds of things. But some of the practices that I see when I coach women, I see in myself, and that I recommend or I see in the research, are things like delineating our effort, Remember that connection to academia that can be so strong. And likely many of you were straight A students. I don't want you to be a straight A employee. My hope is that you could pick what are the things I'm going to go for an A on and what are the B's and C's. Now I will tell you, I was talking to a conference of doctors that were retina experts, and I said, when you're doing surgery on me, please be at A effort. But what they were saying is, oh, this is so helpful. And part of that was because they were applying that A effort into some of their administrative duties. They were also, many of them were on faculty, and they really treated everything the same. So delineating your effort. And you can do that in collaboration, perhaps, with your boss or another coworker if you're not really sure. Because if you are very strong in this preparing to perfection, you might be feeling like, that's too risky. Everyone wants an A in everything. And maybe you are in that situation. I would try to push it. Are there some things you could literally go in like, can we just talk about, can I come in with a draft before I come in with the slides that are so perfect? There's a lot of time waste sometimes in those kinds of things. So delineate the effort. There's also elevating the conversation into risks. So what happens when we are trying to be perfect is you just can't be perfect. You can't be in your business decisions just like you can't be really in life, because we just are not, a leader is called to make decisions in the face of uncertainty, in the face of limited information. And so if you can tune up your understanding of what's the risk that we face with this project, with this initiative, with taking another job or something like that. And I would also tell you that this is also in your handout too, these slides. So I know they're harder to read up here. But if you have the conversation and can start to elevate your recommendations from, given the risk of us not going to market with this product, I recommend we do this. And here are ways we can mitigate once we learn more. So you're really like kind of moving yourself into, I'm trying to manage the risk we're facing, and it might just help you to move away from everything has to be perfect. Share a developmental goal with trusted people. Like, I think that could be a boss, it could be a peer. It could be, this last one on here of speak up in meetings more. This was me. I literally would be like, I'm gonna go say 3 things in this meeting. And I, over my career, got feedback of, we want to hear more from you. And I played the observer too long. Even a couple years ago, I joined a board. I don't have healthcare experience, but I joined for my travel experience. And I was too quiet the first year, and I got feedback on that. Like, we want to know, your fresh eyes really matter. And so this is something for me personally, I have to do. Like, I can't wait for the perfect answer, perfect time to speak up. So setting a goal for yourself. I skipped over delegate with results focus. This was mentioned earlier today too, this idea of how do you, like, if you can do it the best, but you really need to get other people to be doing more of that preparation, how can you sort of set that up? And I think this is where setting the results, here's what I expect from this, and let's set up the checkpoints to make sure it's gonna get delivered in the way that's a fit. But maybe it's not always the way you would do it. Here I go to when I was head of the Whirlpool and Maytag brand some years ago. It was the year of the dish, which meant we redid all of our dishwashers, and I went to so many excruciating meetings on the dishwasher that I know what everything is designed in a dishwasher, where every wine glass, every plate, all that should go. And I, for years, would redo as my husband and daughters loaded the dishwasher. Now, I'm great for a dinner party, because I can fit so much in that dishwasher, but it really was like a big waste of time to be like, oh no, it goes here, and I would redo it. So it's that kind of thing. Are we doing that when we're also managing people? But if we set the result, like the dishes and glasses still got washed, it really didn't need what I was doing. So the more we can focus on results and depending on the skills that the person has, how can we end up being able to let go a little bit of give them a little bit more independence too. Perfectionists can be known as micromanagers, and you don't want to get tagged with that. You can deliver excellence in other ways too. So any sort of step you can take would really be helpful in moving your way towards progress versus perfection. And it's hard because it's part of our identity so often. Before I move on, were there other ideas, other suggestions for preparing to perfection that you heard in your groups today? Hearing none, I will move on. The next one is eagerly pleasing here. And this is so often, it feels great to be liked. The people who are eagerly pleasing sometimes are even beloved in their organization. I mean, and it feels good to get that approval, to get being liked. Here the opportunity is still being liked, but choosing respect over that. And part of that can be being transparent with how you made decisions, how you are thinking about a project or things like that. I think some of the practices, some of the things that come up with eagerly pleasing are things like, how do I be more specific and direct, or how do I give feedback in ways that are getting heard? And my biggest suggestion there, and I've lived through this myself, is to tap into the care that you have for your team, for your company, to let that fuel you into saying what needs to be said. And so sometimes that's even in especially a difficult performance review. I care enough about, using language, like I care enough about you and what you want in your career to tell you that this is working for you, but this thing that's happening is gonna derail you. And I wanna work with you to try to work on that. But so often, if we are eagerly pleasing, sometimes we can fall into the trap of being vague with our feedback. And I have to tell you, it is kind to be clear. It is kind to be clear with those around us. And you can even start to create scripts for yourself. Like I always think 5 words: what I'm worried about is, what I'm wondering about is, what I'd like to dig deeper in, maybe that's 6 words, is this. Like kind of getting your language ready to be able to, in a sort of neutral way, raise the issues that you see. All too often, someone with this tendency knows the issues but doesn't want to rock the boat, doesn't want to be the wet blanket. And you have this power with other people that you will be listened to. I hope that you trust in that too. I have a whole chapter on each one of these, so I'm going to go a little faster on this, but boundary setting is a big one here. This is sort of a practice it from clarifying the boundary you're setting, connect or empathize with what's happening, and then collaborate on how that person how they can get their thing solved. And what happens so often is we clarify, we say, oh, I can't do that thing on Friday. Oh, it's because I have to get up early and do this, and then I have this, and like we start to undo what we've said and lose our power when we go too deep into all of that. So there's a whole process of this clarify, connect, and collaborate in the book. And another thing is, we know that women volunteer and are voluntold for lots of non-promotional work. I just saw a smile at a table, like maybe that was a discussion here. So that happens. And so the more we can start to have a conversation about what can come off our plate, or what are ways that we can say, no, I can't do this, here's what I can do, or here's who I recommend. And I would say celebrate your no's. So if I'm asking you to try experiments over the next 3 months, how many no's are you going to have by whatever this is, December 20th, 19th? Yeah, so just another way to do that. Any other ideas from the crowd that you got from lunch? If not, I will shift on. The idea of fitting the mold. This is this kind of mindset of I want to make it easy for others if I fit in and not sort of stand out, whether red jacket or not. And here the idea here is to look at the environment that you're in your company or whatever is, the organization that you're a part of. Is there a mold? Did everyone come from the same school? Do everyone look alike? Does everyone have the same of something, the same style? And is there a way, is it expanding? Is the mold very rigid? And what are you up for? Like, what would it look like to feel authentic, but be able to succeed here? And by authentic, what I'm meaning is like being at ease with yourself and showing a bit more of yourself. We know we can't go in and say, like, things, too much personal stuff, that can sometimes get in the way. But if we're holding back with being who we are, the company is really losing too. They're losing your unique perspective, which makes for a better, we know that more diverse perspectives that represent our world make for better results and better innovation too. But this is a real personal assessment of like, what am I up for? And sometimes you might want to be the pioneer and sometimes not. When you are the pioneer, it's a pretty amazing thing to model the way for others. And you are changing, you might be facing the harder time now, but you're also changing the world for the other people in your company as well. So pushing pedal to the metal, experiments here. This is really, I think, getting feedback, or there is assessing, is my team with me, or am I way ahead and doing everything? And is there a gap there? You could get feedback to do that too. And for me, this is someone coming to me and saying, I lost my team. Like, how do I get it back? And I think whether you call it this with your team, but it's like calling a do-over. Like, just like we would perhaps with a relationship that's gone one way, and really reconnect with your team. This is where if you are a hard-charging, driven, direct, you might be ahead of your team. The way to reconnect with them is to do an offset and to share why you are how you are. Like, I care so much about delivering next year's plan. I am racing forward with all these things, and I want to make sure I'm getting feedback from you too. But sharing your why, it doesn't mean you have to change who your style is, but it may be, if your style is, I'm so busy, I'm working every single lunchtime. If you are an in-office, maybe it's sort of like, how do you reconnect as a big team, or how do you just go to lunch with people? How do you get to know? Because people want to have that connection. So definitely think of how do you reconnect with the team. The last one, patiently performing, is really all about courageous conversations. I kind of think all of these are about courageous conversations to have. And I think, I have a whole framework in the book about planning a meeting to go talk to your boss about what you've accomplished, what you can contribute, what you want in your career. And I also feel like in this one and in all of them, creating powerful questions that help you to know where you stand. You want to know the book on you. You want to know what's said about you when you are not in the room. And that's really hard to get from other people. It's really hard to get. Feedback is sort of, I think it's a power skill that needs a lot of work in most of our businesses, both giving it and many times getting it as well. And so questions like, how am I tracking versus your expectations? So that we're not just stuck on like early success as maybe being the thing that has worked for us. So we really know what is being said about us. And I have a couple other questions with that too. Whoops. So what I'd like you to do, just very briefly, is go back to your table, and I want you to be sharing, thinking, reflecting, and sharing what's a concrete experiment you can do. And the other two presentations can also be part of this. What you learned earlier, I was struck by Jackie using experiment too, but this idea of emotional intelligence and how leadership, the dilemmas that we face, is very similar to some of these things too. So nicely done, Maria and Laura, for connecting these. But our hope is that you walk out of here with, I'm gonna go do some things as a result of this, that this is not just a great day out of the office and with a great lunch and great conversation, but like action is what we're hoping for. So I'm just going to give you a few minutes at your table to reflect and think and discuss, I should say, on what's a concrete experiment. I'd love to hear from a few of you afterwards too. So go ahead and talk amongst yourselves. So who would like to share one of their experiments? Now remember how I feel about people raising their hands, especially women. So who would like to share an experiment? Thank you.
So I was going to have my no leaderboard. So I start to count how many no's I say throughout the week, just because we get a lot of inbounds and I need to do more of that. So I preserve my own personal time.
Wonderful, thank you. There seemed to be a lot of reaction to the idea of no's, of the amount of non-promotional work that can come our way. Great, thank you. Who else? Yes, thank you. Hang on, just.
The delegate with the goals resonated, and that's definitely something I'm going to try to do more of.
Yeah.
And purposefully so.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
You still only have 24 hours in the day.
Yes.
So you cannot, even if you wanted to, you still cannot do everything. So at some point it becomes a necessity even beyond the choice.
Yeah.
Might as well make it a choice and get good at it, I suppose.
Yeah, and we can do it in work and at home as well. Other experiments? Thank you, back here.
So I'm one of the, performing patiently people, and I'm being offered a much bigger platter of work, so it's kind of coming with the territory that I can prove myself, but I don't think that's enough, so I think I want to define, I don't just want to accept that and assume that that will be recognized. I'm going to come up with maybe some quantitative KPIs or some very specific, arguable ways to show my value.
Yeah, I love that. And you struck a nerve with a platter of more work. I think that happens so often. So I love that. And there's more you can dive into to make sure your contribution is getting noticed. Love it, love it. Who else? Someone over in this side of the room. Thank you. And the microphone's coming your way.
Great. So I am a recovering people pleaser, so I identified with that.
I feel your pain.
Amazing. We're not alone. And I'm realizing at where I am in my career, it's affecting me, to be honest. And something that I can really work on is I'm really strong at building trusted relationships, yet I'm not as strong at closing. And so what I have to do, I have to self-source and bring in clients myself. And I'm in this situation where I'm doing a lot of free work for people who are not formally clients or paying me a fee yet.
Yes.
And so I was talking to my management team of, I need to work on being direct and having those tough conversations with people, or even stating my intentions really early on in the sales process of, my intention is for you to become a client of JP Morgan, or let's formalize our relationship. And these ladies gave me really great language that I can use, and just that encouragement to state my intentions and be very honest and transparent early on. So it's not, oh, I'll just help you ad infinitum. Like, no, this is a business. And so that's kind of what I'm taking away.
Yeah,
from
I love
this.
it. I mean, and it's helping others, but you're setting the intention then as a client. So I love it. Great. One more. My suddenly quiet group. I'm a teacher, so I can wait. And I do. It's much more excruciating, the silence for you all, than it is for me. Thank you.
So delineate effort. So going back and assessing, doing some self-assessment and thinking about what my A's, my B's, and my C's are, but also doing that assessment for members of my team, because that also, I think, goes with this delegate with results focus, is that, you know, for those team members that may have a different letter than I do, you know, they could be a great option for to delegate or, you know, give them an opportunity to work on a new project.
Yeah, that's so great, and because these ideas can also help us as we manage other people. And so what you bring up about this alignment of, do you think I should be doing an A and I'm thinking it's a C, that's an important thing to close. So thank you, thanks for sharing. So I won't force anyone else to share, although there is one back there.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to share, but I actually had a question for you. I love the courageous conversation questions and really seeking feedback, but I also wondered if you have any advice about trying to prep the person for that conversation, because giving feedback, a lot of people are not comfortable with it, and so that could be very scary to the person, I guess, that you're talking with. If you come in and say, what do you think is going to derail my career? And so is there any advice you have in terms of setting that conversation up so that it goes well?
Yeah, and so this is a question where you're asking about feedback for you in this question, is that right? Yeah, so I think that it's a great question. I think setting up, I'd like to talk to you about my career ahead of time, and just want to be able to share with you where I think what I have contributed, you know, the job I'm doing, and explore a bit more about how you get feedback from you. I think it is good to let someone know ahead of time, especially if it's somebody who does not normally dole out the feedback or only gives the, oh yeah, great job, and like nothing more specific, because I mean, we know from the research women get more vague and subjective feedback too. And so the setup of that, and I think that going in with, you know, you're letting the person know this is what I want to talk about, but also going in with a real mindset of curiosity, that I just want to learn. I don't want to sort of judge the answer, because sometimes these things take stages or take multiple meetings of, you know, if you got feedback, getting ready with questions so that if you got feedback like you need to show more gravitas, which is one of those ones that like, what? And so getting ready with questions also around, and if I showed more gravitas, what would that look like? Are there other people in the department or organization that I could look to who are really showing that? So you want to go in with a learning mindset, but you're giving the morning, back to your question, you're giving here's the topic I'd like to talk about. I would also suggest setting it as a separate meeting, not at the end of a status update weekly kind of thing, because it can get tossed aside. So hope that helps you. Great. So I'm going to shift into when we take action, when we do these experiments and build our agility to leverage our strengths, but know that we need to sort of expand some of the ways that we've operated too. That's really where all the growth is. And I have seen, and I see it in the research and the conversations in so many career experiences, when we hold back, we miss all that growth. It's on the other side of action. So we can think about, what we'd like to do, but it's really about taking action. And that's my big hope, that you all will take action from today as well. But some of the things that get in the way, my students will say FOMO. I think there's FOMO, fear of messing up, that is pretty rampant for all of us. It's why I don't want to like participate in that. I don't want to say my opinion, because what if it's wrong? So there's a very strong feeling of like, I don't want to mess up the identity, my reputation, the relationships, my fit here if I stand out too much. I don't want to rock the boat or be too pushy. And I will tell you that that is, we just need to recognize, like, that is kind of what's on my mind, and really evaluate. If it wasn't the greatest thing, it's probably not going to get you fired. But we sort of live sometimes like it's so much. And so there's a lot around the critical voice that we have in our head that might be around being perfect or those things. I encourage you to think about what are those voices that make you hold back. Like for me, they might be something like, I don't know if I want to deal with this. I don't want to rock the boat. For me, going through this book I really battled the, who am I to write a book? Who am I to write a book? And I challenge you to sort of come up with your list of like, what's the greatest hits of your inner critic, or in the book I call it inner antagonist. And what's the thing on replay? So my more recent one was this, who am I to write a book? And create, if that's the default, create an opposite to that, a counter default that you can, in my case, it was, I think I can help, or I have ideas that can help. I could potentially change people's careers. So something that is a counter to that. And then suspend all the judgment you'd have that like, aren't my ideas really any good to help? But suspend judgment. And if I'm going to believe I have ideas I can help, what's the next best action I can take? What's the next best action? So when I was writing the book, it was like, get up at 5 a.m. and write. And then when the book came out, it was like, write more LinkedIn posts, or connect with the Chicago network, or those kinds of things to be able to take the action. So it's noticing what's coming up and then creating a counter to that. Because it's not that those things aren't going to go away. And most of the inner critic voices are something around, you're not ready, you're not worthy, you're not enough. And start to think about, as I said before, I think you're more ready than you think. I know I don't know all of you, but chances are you're more ready than you think. And am I ready enough? Am I ready enough to go for that job, to lead that big project and things like that? But in a world where every women's conference or publication is all about building more confidence, and we get a lot of feedback saying you need to show more confidence, I think we have it all wrong. And what we really need is something we already have, and that is that courage comes first. Courage is really the prerequisite for action. And confidence comes after we try these things and we We fail, we succeed, we learn, and we figure out, I can do it again. I have figured things out. I know all of you have figured things out. I know you had courage to even come here today. Maybe you didn't know anyone, and you came here today. You have courage likely to be in the jobs, and there's probably a whole host of other ways, and I'm gonna ask you soon to think about when you've been courageous. But when we do take that action, actually, I'll come back to that. I'll get you to think about your courage now. So think of times when you took on something that had uncertainty in it, that you didn't know how it was gonna work out. That was hard, maybe scary. Think about it and share at your table. All right, I would like to know, what did you learn from doing something courageous? Come on, this shy group. Yes, thank you. No, you. Yeah, yeah. She's coming over with the microphone. It will help everyone to hear. Thank you.
I feel like I learned that I am capable and I have that power. So that's kind of what I learned.
Wonderful. Woo! Love it. What else? Back here? Oh, no. Who's on deck? We'll take one more.
That it's okay to feel unqualified and doubt and fear, but none of those things mean that you can't do it.
I just love these. Someone was I can't really do it. Is there another one over here? Oh, yeah.
Being courageous can have long-term residual positive effects.
Love it. Long-term residual effects. Yes.
That sometimes the thing that you think is going to hold you back actually springs you forward.
Yeah. All right, you got a lot of ooh up here on that one. The thing that you think is going to hold you back sometimes springs you forward. Thank you. So what I have seen is that it's all about courage, and you have that. And when we are courageous, it does have the long-term impact. It's one courageous step leads to the next one. It's like a positive self-fulfilling prophecy. It creates resilience. You know you can figure it out and succeed, but also get through something that doesn't work out too. You can stand back up. And what I would also say is, from the sense of the mirrored door where we so often look in a distorted way at ourselves, when we do something courageous, we can start to see, like you said, I can do this, I can figure it out. We start to see more of a realistic view than this default sense of like, I'm not ready, that we can move forward and don't have to already know that we have done that job before. Actually, if you've already done the job, they probably don't want you for the job because you're overqualified. So we start to have a realistic view of that. When we do this, like in conversation today, we build community with other women too, and not just women as well. But the more we can be courageous, we show the way to other people, whether there are peers, people above us, our friends, our allies. So I really encourage you to, with the connections you made today, or even afterwards, go up to someone and ask them, do a courageous ask to go have coffee. Someone's already asked me for coffee today, and we're going afterwards. Sorry, we're going to have a catch up. No. But the power of community. Some of you are in organizations that have well-developed ergs or many, many women on teams. Many of you don't too. And many of those budgets have gotten cut over time. Or they're getting cut currently as things go on. So the power of community is so important in our networks as well. So I really encourage that. And you know, I just truly believe when we move forward, and overcome our fear. We're still going to have fear, but we can get through these challenges. We become stronger and more courageous as a result of that. So I really want you to leave here thinking, how are you going to move forward tomorrow? Again, I've said this a couple of times. You are more ready than you think. And if you doubt that about yourself, just maybe do a little investigation, a little inquiry, like maybe, what if Ellen was right and I am more ready than I think? What would you do differently? That's what I'm asking of you. And sorry, Mom, who's not with us right now, and sorry, Timmy, but ladies do fight. We fight with our head, our heart, and our hands, though not to make a fist, but to offer ideas, to give our opinions, to lift other people up. We open our hands in community with each other. And that's, my hope for today is that you have some things to think about, to reflect on, and take action. I always say, or I sign my newsletter, take care and take charge, because I believe leaders that we need today and of the future have both those wonderful lessons that girls and boys learned. And we really need people who take care and take charge. And you have all of that ability to go do that. You have that potential. So I thank you very much. I'll take questions now, but I thank you, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter on LinkedIn, but let me stop there. We have time for questions before we wrap up for the day. Yes?
What are the 3 key pieces of advice you give to your daughters?
Oh, what are the 3 key pieces? Clean your room. Now, no, one is living with us post-college. But I think choose well is one. Choose well in the company and people that you're with. Choose well in a partner that knows you for who you are and who you want to be is one of my biggest ones. Choose well. I have to think about this, but I guess I would also say, because they're young, they're 22 and 25, my advice is go for the biggest, boldest job you can now so you can have options later, because life gets busier. Life will get in the way in many ways. So I think that, I guess the last piece of advice I would say is get really good at giving and getting feedback and knowing your strengths. I'm a big believer in what we talked about today, the knowing your strengths and knowing the other sides that come with your strengths, that knowing the impact you have on other people. So that's off the top of my head, I guess we'll say. Thank you, good question. Maria.
Thank you, Ellen. When do you know it's time to move on?
One of the messages I got growing up was never quit, ever, ever. So I learned along the way that stayed with me. And I think I should have left relationships or jobs sooner sometimes. I think that I'm a big believer in self-reflection and what matters most in the near term. I mean, I believe in the long term, but what matters most as far as, are you building your competencies, you're trying to build your compensation, you are in the thick of caregiving or something else that's going on in your life, and how do you want to spend your time? And so evaluating, I ended up one time with a coach creating a top 10 list of how do I want to work in this next stage, this next few years. And it was anything from here's my commute that I'm willing to do or travel, but the first thing on the list is I don't want to do any stupid stuff anymore. Because I found myself, I had moved up the ladder and I was doing things that I didn't really want to do that anymore. I kind of missed some of the other things. And what am I up for now? So to me, it's about self-assessment. It's stepping back to how is it, like what do I want in my life right now? And there's also the what do I need? There's times where it's like, I need to do this. I have kids about to go to college or whatever else is kind of going on. We're saving for a house or whatever those things are that might keep you in some place. But I feel like when you feel like you are compromising your values, not getting your needs met, that's a time to either try to change it where you are if you can, or look elsewhere. And I think create sort of the list ahead of time, because it also helps you when you get calls from recruiters or other contacts who are like, we have a great job. It's easy to get excited about like, oh, I always wanted to work for that kind of company. But it's like, what really is the job? And will I be happy on a more day-to-day basis? So, thank you. What other questions do you have? Okay.
Lots of questions. Okay. Network and building community is fundamental to professional development and career success. I am absolutely convinced, without question, exclamation point. What do you tell your students in the executive programs that you lead to help them maximize this concept of building community, particularly for those individuals who may be a little shy, the quiet ones who are the brilliant minds who tend to keep the listeners, as has been previously said. Yeah. Can you give us some coaching on what you tell your students?
Yeah, so I think, boy, networks are so powerful, and they're particularly powerful for women. Like, we also know from research that men and women network in a lot of similar ways. Women also have a close-knit group that enables them to learn more about opportunities that they have ahead. So like, oh, I have this close-knit group who can connect me to someone who works at that company, and I can know what is it really like, because that's an important part of networking. I think any chance you have to connect within your company to other women, to other people just in general, and whether that's like an employee resource group or even like I led Kellogg recruitment when I was at PepsiCo. It was a great way to learn people across the divisions as well. I think that when we're more, I think we have to sort of, again, go back to reflection of like, what's our way that we like to meet people? Or what gives us more ease? And for some people, that's going into a big conference and chatting it up with lots of people. For others, like for me, I don't really like to do that. I would rather actually go to something like this where there's structured conversation that I can start to have those conversations, or I can do something that is more of a small group. I'm much more of a small group person, even though I'm talking to a larger group today. I'm planning a Global Women's Summit, and we were talking about networking, and I feel like I have to share this idea of networking, that there's a TED Talk about it, and I think a book that is, don't be a bagel, be a croissant. And the idea in the networking, like when you go into the big room, if we were all up and not at tables, is when you're a bagel and there's 4 people, it's a close-knit group. No one is coming closely set. No one's coming in to join the conversation. But if you're a croissant, you're welcoming and inclusive and open. So that's kind of one of those things that's even in your physical practice of if you are in that kind of thing. But I think it's also it's kind of a push yourself to have the conversations that you want to have. I'm a fan of Design Your Life, which is a book out of Stanford, and I've done their training program. I do some workshops on Design Your Life. And one of the things that they advise in networking is to just rethink about it as, I'm just asking for directions. And this is networking, like as you're trying to figure out, am I interested in moving into that field? Or, but rethinking of it not as like I'm asking for a job, but I'm just seeking directions. And before we had GPS and smartphones, we would have asked for directions. And so the idea of, hey, I'd like to connect with you and ask you about what it was like to move from brand management into academia, in my case. What I think is the worst thing to do is to say, I'd like to pick your brain. That's just so general. And people are busy, and it's like, does this person want a job? It kind of leaves people with assumptions and things like that. So some of it is the discipline of like, here's what I'm interested in connecting on if there's a topic you want to know more of. And sometimes it's just going up afterwards, like having the courage today to go connect with someone. Maybe, I think you all have the list of who is here, and maybe it's someone at a certain company, or you just connected at your table as well. So it's that courage to do that, but picking where you can in ways that is more, puts you a little bit more at ease. And you can also think about, especially if you're sort of getting something, you're learning from someone else, maybe there's things that you could share or teach to others as well. Maria, did I get it? Okay, yeah.
Okay,
I can
now we're
hear.
good. So you started your presentation with a statistic that said 70% of the valedictorians are women, and yet when you go through the funnel, less than 10% are chief executive officers today. And so I'm curious, do you want to offer a prediction about what it might look like for the Gen Zers that are entering the workforce now? And do you have a prediction about will we achieve workforce parity, compensation parity in their generation? And what can this room do to help with that?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. When I moved to work at Kellogg, my peers would say like, oh, what are the women like now? Like what are the then millennial or beginning of Gen Z women like? And I would say they wanted the same things that we did. They just believe they'll get them. We were having a little bit of a conversation about like in some ways, you know, the red jacket days or the wearing suits that were like men's suits with a skirt basically are really laughable now, but you kind of just it was conforming, it was totally fitting a mold completely. I believe from what I see in not just the women I know or my daughters, but in the research too, that we have very different generations coming into the workplace who are really questioning why do we always do the things the way they did them, and want more of a life too. You know, they want to have meaningful work, but also they want to have a life too. Now I know there's a lot of multi-generational challenges with that, but I believe that they will change the workplace. Well, I think it's still slow in coming though, too. And we sort of, even in the sort of talent war, the overhiring just before and during COVID, and then like a lot of layoffs, maybe more so in tech than in other places. But you start to see the demand supply from a talent perspective really does impact companies saying, come back 5 days a week. So I'm sort of veering off into wanting more of a work life that it feels more in balance. But I think we will lose the talent war if we don't adjust the workplace. I don't have all the solutions, though, to do that, and I think it's slow in coming. What I almost wanted to say, and I will say, is I think that if Gen Z and younger millennials don't see change, they're going to keep moving to other companies or create their own. So we may see less of like, who would want to be a CEO at some big company, and more of like, I want to do my own thing. So I see a real shift in the types of companies in the world, according to me. So I don't know. You all, what do you think about that? I mean, while we're on it, I guess I just also, while we're all women here together, the more that we can advocate for change, but we have to deliver our business too, but also do it in a really a different way than the past. And you know, Claudia Golden, who won the Nobel Prize, referred to jobs becoming greedy jobs, and it really started to change in the late 90s of like, how do you do it if you have 2 people in a household and the hours are 60 or 80 or, you know, some of these kinds of things. So we have to, as a company, a country, address this too, like childcare and caregiving of seniors as well. So I'm really going off the rails on that now. So just reel me in. More questions, or how am I doing? Other questions? Yes, I'm sorry.
I actually have a comment
Yeah.
about what you just said.
Yeah.
I can only speak to my industry. I'm in construction, but we used to be notorious to work 60 to 80 hours a week. And, so we work really long hours. But by the same token, in order for me to bid a project, you know, I physically had physical blueprints, and I used coloring paper, and I had a 486 computer chip or whatever, and it would take me about a week just to do one project. Today it takes me 3 hours. So
Yeah.
I think technology, we're not using it to what it can be done,
Yeah.
and I think that's where you're going to get your answer, at
Yeah.
least in our case, for that life balance.
Yeah.
And I tell my employees, if you're working more than 40 hours a week, you're a loser. No.
Yeah. So we just need that sentiment all around our country.
No, I just think we should
but-
have a healthy
but-
life and take advantage of the technology that's given to us.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, thanks for sharing that. Other questions, comments? Oh, one back here.
I just have a quick comment about, because I too have a 22-year-old daughter who got caught up in the college pandemic cycle. So when we talk about emotional intelligence rates going down, there's some obvious correlations between that as well. But what she has told me as she's navigating getting a job, and her father and I are fully to blame, we didn't really sell it very well, because the last 4 years we've been sitting in front of our desks, in a chair, in an office, looking at emails, staring at screens. And so she doesn't want that life. She's very, very adamant about not wanting that life. And I don't know where to send her to not get that life, because that's all I've known. So having to be more creative, to your point, do your own thing. What is that? You've got the time and the energy, but I don't think we're selling the 40-hour work week that well to this new generation.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think outside of your company, it's more than 40 hours in many places. And I mean, good on you for doing that. I think it's great. But it's also, it's the sitting at the computer, or like what work looks like, or what, many times there's an opting out that is happening because what it looks like to get to that C-suite doesn't look very appealing, or there's a lot of burnout. So there's so much that we have to address. I think it's you know, for you all, or back to, I think, maybe the original question, it's like, what can we do? Is I think start to have conversations about this. I think it's a long-term thing of we will not have the talent in our organizations. The numbers show us that we will not have the talent in our organizations if we don't go after some change. And you know, things in particular, because of the timing of careers, a really important stage is right at the time that many people are in their heavy caregiving or childbirthing years. So it makes it really hard. And you know what? I should have said this earlier. I say this to my students. I'm not here to depress you. I'm here to prepare you for the world that is so that you can go create the world that we all want. And that's another of one of my biggest hopes. And I think that the realizing that you are ready to go do more than you might think is really so important as well. So thanks for that question. We have more challenges than answers, too.
I think that's the best way to end it. It was a wonderful, positive
thank you
message.
so much.
Ellen, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experiences with us, and for all those incredible students that you are inspiring and teaching to live out their best lives as well. Okay, we are almost done. We have one last wrap up with Karen Eskin, an amazing Chicago Network member. And we did this last year, and she is masterful. She ran Radio Disney when Radio Disney was around. She has a masterful way of summarizing several hours of learning and education. So I'm letting you take it away, Karen.
I must admit, I'm having a little FOMO right now after that introduction. I hope you all have had as much fun as I have listening to these is this on? Listening to the amazing speakers, and as important in some ways as the speakers was the wonderful nudge they gave us to work within our tables and network and get to know the people around us. I think if any of you have been here last year, you'll notice we did more interactive work this time, and I think it's been to all of our betterment. So to quickly recap, the first wonderful presentation we saw was with Carol Fitzgibbons on the power of emotional intelligence and how it can drive success. Emotional intelligence is one of our most vital skills as a leader and in life. It's defined as the ability to understand and manage our emotions, our needs, perspectives, and the ability to understand those same things in others. And it allows us to interact with others in a way that helps us build relationships. Some key tenets of emotional intelligence: self-awareness. We want to be open to feedback. Self-management. Focus on priorities while being in the present. Social awareness. See what's going on with others. And relationship management, reaching out in a way that works for them as much as it works for you. We learned about mood contagion and how our moods, our leaders' moods, and our team's moods can affect everyone. And we learned about the CEO disease of the higher you go, the less likely people are going to tell you what they really feel. We went over some skill builders, the 5 skill builders for emotional intelligence. Pause and breathe. Okay. Reflect regularly. Seek and act on feedback. Manage your well-being. I think that is just so important. And stop multitasking and keep those phones underneath your desk from going like this and turn them over. If you can focus on just one of these and work on it and repeat it, you can make it into a habit, especially if you hold yourself accountable. We can increase our emotional intelligence in both our personal and work lives. And thank you very much, Carol. Next, we were learning about managing leadership dilemmas with Jackie Gnepp. And she taught us how to use psychological science to make women more successful. We discovered the difference between a problem and a natural tension dilemma. Problems can be solved, but natural tensions need to be managed over time, and they never leave us. They are interdependent, they are apparent opposites that are dynamic over time, and there are fixed trade-offs. For example, we have to learn how to speak and also listen, spending and saving, ownership versus collaboration, doing versus teaching. And both sides can be good to each of these natural dilemmas, but if we skew too much or we turn the dial up or down too much on any of them, we can go overboard. So it's really the balance, and this balance goes with us forever with all the people we work with throughout our career. And most, I just said that already, but they can be a superpower too. And if you can balance them, they can help your team and your organization to balance as well. And it constantly scales up. Finally, we met with Ellen Taaffe, and we had a wonderful presentation on breaking the mirror door. You are all more ready than you think you are. Messages from our childhood seem to linger with us, and they linger a lot more longer than we give them credit for, and they sometimes give us a distorted view. So the view in our mirrors are sometimes crooked. It involves how we cultivate relationships. It's about how we want to look and be good, and it's how we sometimes prioritize our appearance and prioritize overly working hard. And it can cause us to reflect a little too much inward. And Ellen took us through, wait a minute, hold on. We are often faced with high expectations, certainty, which makes it hard to question, and judgment, the fear of others' judgment and the fear of making judgments on our own. And what Ellen took us through was the five key tenets that we can work on, and we talked about ways to deal with them. And much like everything we learned today, it's a balance. It's a matter of pushing hard on one end while pushing by letting go on the other. So one was progress over perfection. And we have to learn to delineate our efforts and define and ask the risk of each decision. We can share a goal with one person. We can delegate with results, give our teams more empowerment, and set a goal to speak out more often. A lot of us think that we are people pleasers, and we have to focus on respect over likability or approval. It is kind, this was some great lines. It is kind to be clear. Create scripts for ourselves to help us be able to articulate what we want to say. Set some boundaries and celebrate our no's. We have to think about, do we want to fit into a mold? We want ease over easy to fit in. What does fitting in look like for each of us? It's going to be different for each of us. How are we going to be authentic, and is this a company we want to be and feel we can be authentic within? We want to bring more diverse assessments to our jobs. And can we choose to be pioneers and change the molds that these organizations have carried on for so long? Pedal to the metal. This is where we have to look at results through reconnecting in case we've lost our teams or we've gotten ahead of our skis. We want to share about why we are who we are, and I think the important point that she shared with us about sharing our why and helping our teams understand why we do what we do. And I think then that goes back to empathy again. And once somebody gets you and you get them, it's such a more powerful connection. Patiently performing and waiting to be recognized. We need to have courageous conversations. We have to be prepared to share what we're doing. We picked experiments where we tried to work on all this. But I will re-say regarding all of these programs today, we are more ready than we think. And when we hold back, we miss all the growth on the other side of action. So beware of FOMO, and I hope I've given you a recap for the day. But courage comes first, and I hope we can all take some courageous action from what we've learned today and carry it on for the rest of our careers. And thank you.
Okay, now you see why we have her do the recap. I mean, I thought she was a former debater. She wasn't. As a former debater, that was brilliant. So thank you, Karen. Thank you so much for doing another incredible, brilliant recap. We've come to the end of the day, and I cannot tell you the joy. I mean, I've been sitting back there. Oh, I'm going to get emotional. I've been sitting back there just watching all of you, and I cannot tell you sincerely the joy that has brought me today to listen to the buzz, to watch the relationships that have been built, to watch the relationships that exist but are getting even more grounded, more authentic, more vulnerable, right? We don't take the time to give back to ourselves, and I think you did that today. So thank you for investing in yourselves. Thank you for joining us, the Chicago Network, today for this incredible program. You'll be getting a survey. Please be honest with your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. This is an annual thing. So we hope that you will be back next year for Launchpad 2025. And also, what we're going to be doing this year is we are going to be very intentional about making sure that we keep all of you connected. So stay tuned for outreach from us about special programs that we're going to have throughout the year, and that you're welcome, and we encourage you to come and bring friends to, because you are the future of our global leadership, and you are the future of the Chicago Network. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day.